Well, we are live on Facebook.
Technologist.
Hi, good evening.
Where's Craig? What you really doing?
Good evening, everyone.
What would you like?
Mark, it's 7 o'clock. We're gonna
screen and then we go down. Little thing here. I'm not sure we can make that disappear.
Good evening, everyone. Let's get started with the meeting.
Oh, it's not gonna be there? Oh, okay, then I can live with it.
We'll call the meeting to order. Julie, can you do the roll call?
On your screen. This one. On your screen.
President Hines,
President.
Carol Barford, here, Dietmar Basooner,
Present.
Bob Falk,
Present.
Mark Lederer,
Here.
Adnan Lutfi,
Here.
and Kate Ulfrit, here.
Okay. Item 3, statement of public notice. It looks like the public was noticed on this, but want to make sure that was properly noticed. Julie, Brian?
That's correct.
Okay, procedures orientation, just want to remind folks that the meeting is also being broadcast on the Facebook Live portion of the village Facebook site. Any questions, comments on that site won't be responded to contemporaneously by the board, but those questions or comments can be sent directly to Village Administrator Brian Moody. Item 5, presentation of information regarding possible purchase of property at 2801 Marshall Court, the Lodgic building. I just had a couple opening remarks, and then I'm going to introduce some trustees to go through some things. You know, we had a great turnout, by the way. I see a lot of familiar faces from the open house. And if you didn't have a chance to get over there and see it firsthand and would like to, we'll just let the staff know or let me know, and we can make that accommodation. Tonight's town hall is about exploring options, not presenting a done deal. The village is still in an exploratory phase. The contingent offer on Lodgic secured a fair price, so we could gather facts, test assumptions, and most importantly, hear from you. What makes the Lodgic worth considering is that it significantly reduced the risks compared to building new or undertaking costly renovations. We would gain a turnkey facility with underground parking, modern furnishings, and potential lease income, all at less than half of what new construction costs today. But numbers aside, this is about community, creating a true hub with childcare, cafe, event, and community spaces that bring people together. Tonight's program is essentially going to flow this way. We're going to start with Mark Lederer, Trustee Lederer, on some of the capital planning and financial issues. And then we'll have a brief cost comparison and some of the options and cost benefits provided by Trustee Bob Falk. I've asked Chief Weitzel to provide some perspective on the space needs. And after that, we're going to open up the floor for your questions and discussions. So Mark, are you ready to start what you'd like to present?
If I can share my screen, I will be. Let's give it a shot here.
He's trying to see.
Am I doing something?
What do you have to say?
The share is a PowerPoint beyond it.
Is it document?
It's a shirt.
It's this PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Yes. Here. This is what I'm trying to share.
Sure, and this is called CIP review.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
You have the screen open.
Yes, I think I know.
Oh. Yes. Nothing.
I'll have to share the screen.
Okay. Can you put your finger there?
Yep.
Is that how it works? Okay. Okay. Maybe it's just the setting. So now can you share, unless you have to leave and come right back in. Oh, there it is. There we go. Got it.
There we go.
There we go. Now I just have to get rid of
Presentation.
all this other extraneous
Can you put
information.
the slideshow mode so that
It's obscuring.
top left?
Slideshow.
Run slideshow.
There we go.
Yeah, it's up there, but
Thanks, Sheldon.
okay. I think
You want to
that's
press that one, the smallest one? Perfect.
good evening. Technology. Anyway, thought we'd open tonight talking about the capital investment plan. I thought we'd open tonight talking about the capital investment plan before Lodgic. So Bob and others will speak to Lodgic, but I'm going to address what the current capital plan was and still is until such time as the board modifies the plan. So what is the capital investment plan? So that's next one. Okay, I got it. So what is the CIP? So basically it is a schedule of all our planned capital asset purchases and related funding. So what are our capital assets? Capital assets are the buildings, the roads, the infrastructure, all those projects and assets that are, have lives of multiple years and are fairly expensive projects that need to be financed. So they're not directly paid for out of property tax revenues, but they're paid out of borrowing. And then the property tax revenues go to pay back the debt. So this plan is adopted every year by the board. It will be updated and adopted in September. And it's done on a rolling 5 years basis. So the board plans 5 years out as to what those large capital projects are and how they'll be financed. The assets in the fund, as I say, are principally raised through the issuance of debt, but occasionally we also use the proceeds of asset sales, grants, and things of that nature to make up the financing. Financing plan is reviewed by the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee reviewed this plan last October, and recommended the financing of this plan, which you'll see shortly, to the board, and the board approved this plan. So this is the only plan that we have outstanding today approved by the board. Okay. So how does the board prioritize projects? That's been an issue that many people have raised. Why are we investing in one place versus the other? What's the process by which the board decides where capital investment needs to be made? So a couple of benchmarks for us are our strategic plan, which is in draft, but hopefully will be approved by the board fairly shortly. Our comprehensive plans, the surveys that we've done of the residents, as well as just conversations with neighbors about what needs to get done in the village. While the residents are our primary focus, we also have to be mindful that there are other stakeholders in the village, the staff, other commercial property owners that also are important to the life of the village, and we need to take that into consideration. So what are some of the goals of these plans? What are some of the things we consider? Things like spurring the economic development, sustainability, recruitment, retention, and just maintaining the quality of our assets. So what are these capital assets? We've been through that before. Again, the roads, the buildings, the streets. Where are these capital assets purchased from? They're not purchased from the general fund. They're not purchased directly using the taxes that are contributed to the village. They are coming from the debt levy, the portion of the property tax levy that's devoted to debt service. Property taxes, therefore, are the primary source of funds for operating costs such as salaries and the like. But with respect to paying for capital assets, the way that's done is we borrow for those assets, we incur debt for those assets, and then the property taxes that we collect are used to pay that debt service until the debt is extinguished. Important thing to note here is that there are no levy limits to property taxes that are collected for the purpose of paying down debt, whether it's principal or the interest. So unlike the operating budget, where there are strict levy limits, with respect to the repayment of debt, there are none. Okay. So we have many capital projects, many needs in the village, and it far exceeds our capacity at any point in time to borrow to pay those projects. So they have to be prioritized and staged over time. And I would say the answer to the question as to what the board's priorities are, as I say here, follow the money. Look at the capital and improvement plan that we have, or investment plan. This is the document. It's available on the website, but it basically shows each year, it names the projects, names the cost of the projects, the estimated cost of the project, as well as the source of funding for that project. So it's all laid out in the document. The one thing we have to always keep in mind is because we cannot do the projects all at one time, they have to be financed over time. So we have to be very wary of the concerns of inflation, of financing costs, and the fact that they occur over a period of time means, and we're planning in advance, that we do not have precise estimates for the cost of a project. And we often use placeholders. So what are the capital projects at this point in time? There are streets and utilities. We've scheduled 2.8 million in 2025 and 2026. And over the whole 5-year planning horizon, we've devoted scheduled $5.9 million for streets and utilities. Facilities, again, focused on this building, Village Hall, as well as the DPW building. We've currently got in the plan $6.4 million planned for 2025 and 2026. The community center is also on our radar. We had scheduled $1 million for that in 2025 and 2026. McKenna Park, another $1 million. And then there's a host of smaller projects. So that's the board's, up until Lodgic, the board's current priorities, and a draft of the new CIP or the proposed CIP will probably be delivered to the board at our regular September meeting, and certainly no later than October. So we'll see how some of these things get shifted as we talk about Lodgic and talk about the other needs of the village. But as to where things stand right now, we have about $15 million of projects over the next 5 years. Since this CIP has gone through the finance committee, the financing associated with doing all these projects has already been recommended to the board. It's already been vetted once by the finance committee and approved by the board. So if there's a new CIP, or there will be a new CIP, the new CIP and the financing of that CIP will go again to the finance committee for their review and their recommendation to the board before the board approves the new CIP. That's the way the process works. So again, how do we pay for these projects? Well, overwhelmingly from the issuance of public debt, general obligation debt of the village. One of the things that we try to do is to match the maturity of the debt along with the life of the project. So instead of doing a project for $6 million today, which current residents essentially pay for through their property taxes and debt service, what we try to make sure is that the debt has a maturity of 10 or 20 years, so that as people move out of the village, as people move into the village, all the residents that benefit from that investment help to pay for it through their property taxes and the debt service. So right now, or at the end of last year, we were sitting with about $12.8 million in debt. It's come down quite a bit. I suspect it's probably lower today. We have not incurred any debt, new debt in 2025, and we have some debt repayment. So the debt's come down considerably. As far as our capacity to borrow was concerned, the only limitation on our debt is, of course, what the marketplace will accept. But beyond that, there's a state imposed limit that's based on equalized value of property, which as of the end of last year means that we had about $48 million was the maximum amount the village could borrow. We have no intention of borrowing anything close to that amount, but people have asked, residents have asked, what is the capacity of the village? And that's the number. The village debt is extremely highly rated. It has the highest rating possible from Standard & Poor's of AAA, which is kind of equivalent. If you follow your own personal FICO score, it's like an 850 FICO score. You can't do any better than that. The rating is a function of the village's ability, deemed ability to make full and timely payment on its debt. So in a way, the village itself is just a pass-through. The rating agencies, our creditors are looking through to the residents. They're looking through to the property, the value of the property in the village. They're looking through to the income of the residents of the village, because ultimately that is the source of repayment of any debt that the village incurs. The board this year has authorized, but has not drawn down, 1.1 million in borrowing in a private placement. That was to fund the projects, the capital projects for 2025. Okay. The board elected not to actually place that debt offering pending the discussions that are going on right now with respect to the CIP and Lodgic. So we haven't committed ourselves yet to any new borrowing until we sort this out, which we need to do quite quickly. Lastly, and that's my last slide here, so near the end if you have questions. But basically, the eternal question before the village is always, with respect to capital assets, are we going to repair them? Are we going to renovate them? Are we going to replace them? Or are we going to acquire them? Okay. And we have done the whole range of these things over time, depending on the asset. There are a number of challenges that are common anytime we talk about acquiring or replacing assets. Well, the fact of life is the village continues to age. The trees are aging, the roads are aging, the facilities are aging, and requires continual reinvestment unless we allow those properties to deteriorate further, which will only make them more expensive to repair or replace down the road. Often we find that certain facilities are no longer well designed for the efficient and safe operation, whether it's the PW staff, whether it's the policing, the facilities just get out of date. We're also well aware of the high and increasing cost of construction, particularly since the pandemic, associated now, I would say, aggravated by things such as tariffs and immigration, restricted immigration, is just raising the bar. To the extent we've postponed projects, they only become more expensive in the future. So we really have to bear that in mind. There are also a number of opportunities that we have, again, in a generic sense, I'm not talking about with respect to Lodgic or any particular asset at the moment, but there are opportunities to reduce our operating costs and maintenance costs, safe and efficient work environments, creating more attractive and better workspaces, greater sustainability, and on and on. So I think as we look at a particular asset, acquiring a particular asset, or doing a particular renovation, in general, these are the kind of issues that we will face and we will have to sort through and see if we can reach a resolution on them. That's basically all I had to say on this subject. I'll either answer questions or turn it over to Bob, who will speak specifically to some of the challenges and opportunities with respect to Lodgic.
Yeah, I think we're going to have time for questions once we finish this portion. So Bob, are you ready to?
I am, if I can get this
Maybe.
It's like I'm
Shabnam?
as old as Mark is.
So you gotta come in here and share your screen. There you go.
What else is sure?
Mark, you have to stop sharing.
Yeah.
I have to stop. Okay.
If anybody wants to sit here in the middle aisle on the floor, like if you want to be able to see the screen, there's space here.
The chairs. No, I don't want to share. Well,
Stop.
oh, there it is. Thank you, Sheldon.
Request.
Charges to share.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I do desktop?
No, the PowerPoint should appear on your screen.
Well,
But that's what that
PowerPoint right there. So what do I do?
Can you escape that?
And by the way, my presentation, a copy of it will be on the web. A copy of Bob's presentation will be on the web, probably in the same section, the modernization of facilities. You'll find the links there. Yep, okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, the slideshow's working.
Can you
but-
get out of this?
Well, that's what I.
There we
Yeah,
go.
oh,
Now. Now.
Oh, okay, yeah, go back over here, open this up, click share,
there's-
and,
I think it should be that one.
everybody does.
How about documents?
try that. Actually, I think it's Firefox,
There we go.
because it's not, it's on a web, it's on
It's up.
Firefox.
Use that.
Put that, press share. Open just the settings. Oh, this is a little easier. Use it, allow it to share your, oh, here it comes. So click there and allow it. Wow, that's tough.
Well, hey, don't we have it on your, or can we?
I think I closed mine out. Sorry.
Okay, let's try this. Just 1 second. Can you log in?
Do you need an AV nerd over
Just
there?
1 second. We'll get it. Wait.
AV nerd.
So unlock
Oh my.
and then.
That wasn't satisfying. Sorry.
I should do it.
Yeah, I should do it.
Yeah.
Can you press plus?
Oh, I can't
That
remember.
makes me happy, man.
Because I'm gonna be. Let people know you're still committed.
Well, who knows?
May I be in this?
Well, I'm here, this is
For that.
from Outlook, I have opened my presentation.
Oh,
Do you have it on your desktop? You have it
No,
on your
because it always saves the-
okay.
Sorry, everybody. I thought I knew how to run a computer.
So it's right here. Yep.
Oh.
So,
It's on
but if you
Firefox.
go to share, the settings don't, he doesn't have Zoom settings to allow sharing.
Oh.
So Mark added the settings that allow. Yes, that's it. That's it. We're ready. We're ready to go.
Okay, we left the meeting, now we gotta go back to. All we gotta do is go back into.
Okay.
Alright, if you go back to the meeting, it'll work out.
Sure. I mean, he didn't have to do that, but that's okay.
Open your meeting back up.
Okay, well, that means I need the password. Meeting ID.
Yeah, I'll get that in there in the first.
That's easy.
Zoom has decided it's really update now.
He's got it. That's perfect.
Give 10 more seconds and it'll be ready to go.
Mark, is yours up?
This is to log in a Zoom. It's gonna be 30 seconds. 30 seconds feels like a minute these days.
Yeah. Just another minute, folks. We're close.
That's right here again, Bob. Hey.
And hit share. That's okay.
We're up.
So now just go into Firefox and change. There we go.
Share, you just to bring up your power.
Yeah, just put right up there. Oh, boy.
Yeah, instead of this power.
Share, tab.
Yeah, I know.
Right there.
There we go.
Hurry them up.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Good job.
There you go.
Yes, okay. Now, Mark, how should I get rid of that?
Oh, yeah.
I would get rid of this thing though. Side.
Oh, there it is. There you go.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, folks, and thank you for coming tonight. It's really great to see all the village in one place. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Falk. Since I've been a trustee, I have largely focused my efforts on facilities because I'm a civil structural engineer by training, and this has an interest for me. So I've looked over a lot of the reports and a lot of the information in regards to our facilities. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is really my due diligence in making sure that the information that we have passes muster, at least to this engineer. I don't presume to speak for the other trustees. So this is my interpretation. So before we start, I know there's probably some folks here who maybe aren't familiar with all buildings in the village. So I just want to quickly say what they are. I think you know where you are. You're in the village or existing village hall, but we also have what some people call the firehouse or the old village hall, or as Mark refers to it as the DPW, the Department of Public Works. We also have, you go out Old Middleton Road by the golf course and the state labs. We have a property there that is referred to as a salt shed or cold storage, where we have a storage building and the building that we keep our salt in. And of course, then there's the Lodgic building. So as an engineer, I always ask the question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Lodgic came along, and it wasn't some bright, shiny object that we just said, hey, I want that. This was a response to our facilities issues in the village, and we saw Lodgic as a possible solution. And this is what we're trying to evaluate here. Is it a solution for us to purchase Lodgic? And as some of what you'll hear here is redundant, but I think it's worth emphasizing that we need to address the escalating maintenance costs associated with our aging facilities. All studies show it. I think if some of you visited this facility and have been in the old firehouse, you'll see that maintenance has been deferred, and it's a result of that deferred maintenance that is causing a lot of these escalating costs. And as Mark had mentioned, the facilities don't always support the current needs. Some of these buildings were built in the 40s, some in the 70s. And our departments have changed. You know, the police force today is not the same it was in 1970. And we have to deal with things that weren't an issue then. We're also in an environment where construction and repair costs are rapidly rising. The last number I heard was 8% for construction. The government says our inflation is at 2.7. Construction is a lot higher. In 5 years, 8% increase. If it increases by 8% over the next 5 years, you'll see a 50% increase in cost in construction. I think it's also, we should recognize that because we're a landlocked community, we lack the ability to expand and increase our tax base. We're not like Cross Plains, who has more farmland to annex or to develop and increase their tax base. We're limited here. So we have to use what we have. And so in my mind, I think in order to minimize tax increases to individual residents, we need to think creatively about our revenue sources. And so I was thinking about it, are there strategic opportunities that we can pursue that will mitigate the future tax burden for all? So what are our options in regard to these facilities? Well, we can do nothing. And that, of course, just pushes the problem into the future. I think our approach, for the most part in the past, has been to do the minimal to maintain the status quo. That's what I would call a Band-Aid approach. We keep putting Band-Aids on stuff, and as Mark said, if facilities continue to age, we continue to be less functional, and that's going to catch up to us. And the other option is to be proactive, and that's kind of what I'd like to talk about next, is some of the things that we've looked at and options for which we have data. We did have a consultant, an architect called FGMA, that came in and did a condition assessment of some of our buildings. They offered at least one scenario on combining some of our departments. And by the departments, I'm talking about administration, police, and public works. Those are the three departments that are relevant here. Then we also have a resident, Tom Deegan, who is a local property developer. He has offered some scenarios that he has shared with us, generously shared with us. And then we have the Lodgic opportunity. FGMA analysis, that was really heavily focused on future need. Their solutions tried to look into the future, and as a result, were very generous in, I think, in their space needs. They didn't offer any detailed plans to meet the proposed space needs. They more or less just took an area and assigned a cost number to the area and came up with an estimate of construction. They only did one scenario, and that scenario was to build a new 3-department facility at the firehouse. It would take 3 stories in order to put all 3 departments, according to FGMA, at the firehouse. And that would be a cost of, they estimated between $16 and $19 million. Tom Deegan's analysis, this was based on a space needs analysis performed by Tom Deegan. In what he's presented so far, he had 3 scenarios. The first 2 assume that the administration would stay here at Village Hall and that the police would move into the firehouse with Department of Public Works. So that's an assumption in his analysis. And here, I hope you can see some of this. This is directly out of Tom's report. His first option was to renovate the Village Hall, renovate the firehouse. It would require some work out of cold storage, and that would total $11.9 million. The second option was to do a combination of renovation and new construction. In this case, again, he assumes that the administration would stay at Village Hall, and that, maybe I should use this, and that the firehouse would be completely torn down and a new structure built there. But also some costs would be incurred out at the cold storage. That resulted surprisingly close to the first option at 11.7 million. And then the third option that he's provided us would be, again, new construction and renovation. In this case, it was putting all three departments like FGMA did at the firehouse. So there's no cost at Village Hall, but there's a $9.3 million cost at firehouse, 2 million at cold storage, resulting in 11.3 million. So all of these scenarios seem to come out about the same cost. I should point out that these cost estimates do not include engineering costs, architecture fees, and what's called FF&E, which is furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, which is, once you build a building, you have to furnish it. You have to put all the stuff in it. And that,
A little note say, except village.
All could be sold.
Oh.
and
Yes.
And so-
To chat during the presentation, so.
Yeah, so this last scenario, since the village hall is not being utilized, it could be monetized. And I can talk more to this, but I've estimated the value of this land at $2 million. Now, the Lodgic analysis. This is sort of a separate animal. It's not based on the needs analysis performed by Tom Deegan. It does assume that the administration and police department can live with the space at Lodgic, and that the Department of Public Works can live with the existing firehouse with a refurbish. So if we purchase Lodgic, the existing firehouse stays as it is. Because we're taking police and administration from here, putting them over at Lodgic. So in this scenario, the cost, the option we have to buy right now, and again, it's an option to buy. We put no money down. We have 90 days from when the offer was accepted to purchase this building or walk away. And all we've invested is our time looking into the option. That's a fixed cost. We're going to have to do some initial remodel. I put this at $500,000. Some people think it should be less. Some people think it's going to be more. We have an architect engaged that is going to provide us some estimates of what it will take on that second floor, if you went there today, on how to rearrange some of the spaces so the police have security and are separated and from administration, and they have a secure place to work. So that's what we're looking at in that remodel. Of course, the firehouse still needs some work. So we've allocated $2 million for that. I just talked to Terry Hanchek about some of the needs there. Our existing firehouse doesn't have much in the way of insulation in it. Heat pours out of it. It's they would like to raise the north end of it, raise the roof so they can raise the beds of their pickup trucks so they can work on them. They would like to put in a lift to be able to work on their equipment, and also some electrical work and other things. And so it would not be a tear down and rebuild. What we're talking about is refurbishing that space to address some of these needs for the Department of Public Works. So going across again on this scenario, adding everything up, we add 2 million to address the firehouse, but we subtract 2 million for the sale of this property. And that brings us to total back to $7 million. And as Mark said, we have allocated for our facility 6.4 million. So I think you can see that this option seems to be significantly cheaper than others.
I think in the previous slide, we didn't do an VH offset for the last option. Did he?
Who's at the bottom?
It's here at the bottom. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that this, I have it in my notes. This 11.3, to be consistent, would be reduced by $2 million. Thank you for catching.
9.3, yeah.
To 9.3.
But you would have to add 10 to 20%.
You still need to add 10 to 20% for that. Okay, I have two more slides left. I'd like to talk about the pros and the cons of Lodgic as I see it. I think I'll start with the cons. And I've heard some residents say this, that they feel that it's not ideally located. It is more off to one end of the village. From my perspective, that I live in the central village, it's not that big a deal, but, and I should also say that most of the growth in the village, from a population standpoint, it's been several hundred people have been added to our population. A lot of those are along University and down around Marshall Court. So we can't forget those folks. This could be closer for them and more convenient. We can't, if we move into Lodgic and monetize this property, we can't be guaranteed when it'll sell. I mean, I think we're in a city that there's been a lot of development and a need for housing. But nonetheless, it could sell quickly and it could take a while. So I see that as a negative. And also the remodel of the public works building or the firehouse could be delayed until that property sells and we have the money to be able to talk, to address the public works building. What do I see as the pros of Lodgic? Number one, the sale of the village hall property, this property offsets the cost of purchasing Lodgic. If we sell this, it's $2 million income. Whether we apply it to Lodgic or some other use, that's to be determined, but it can offset the cost. I think more importantly, we buy Lodgic, it's a half an acre piece of property. This is a full acre. And so we're moving into a smaller property that that the departments think serve our needs. And we're freeing up this more valuable piece of property for sale. And more importantly, to the actual income from the sale is the future tax revenue potential. Likely, there will be a larger building put on it that will be worth a lot more, that will pay us more taxes in the future. That's what I talked about when I meant strategic opportunity. I think this is the strategic opportunity to leverage this property value. I think a real asset of Lodgic is the minimal transition cost. It's basically a turnkey building. And whereas doing heavy remodels on some of our existing, we can't just move right in. There is minimal FF&E expenditure. Those of you that walked through there again saw the quality of the materials in there. And we wouldn't have to do much expenditure on furniture, fixtures, or equipment. It does minimize the impact of rising construction costs. The only fixed number in everything I presented is the cost of Lodgic, the 6.5 million. That's the only fixed number. Everything else is an estimate. And that's uncertainty. And so I think this makes it a little more certain from our end. It's a newer building, lower maintenance costs. So I think that'll be the case. And potentially some lower operating costs. The building is better insulated. It has a solar roof on it, and that will offset some of the electrical costs as we go forward. Some of our properties in the village have been sold to not-for-profit organizations. We just lost between $40,000 and $50,000 in income when the UW Credit Union down the road sold to the university. And every time that happens, we lose income. I'm not suggesting the village should go out buying property to prevent not-for-profit from purchasing them, but this is something that somebody else is going to purchase this, and it could be a not-for-profit. I think for those of you that have visited, I think it's an improved community space in Lodgic compared to over the pool. As Mark said, I think that when you talked about the community center and that $1 million, that was intended for that space over the pool, correct?
Correct.
So if we don't need to make that into a community center, perhaps we have another $1 million to put towards this. I think another aspect, and I know Jamie has maybe addressed this, our chief has addressed this in some of her notes. And I worked on the police retention committee this past year, and keeping staff, especially in police, has been difficult. We've spent a lot of time because there's basically a crisis in this country with policing. Nobody wants to go into policing. So trying to find officers to cover, we have a full staff now, but it's been a struggle. And that the dissatisfaction comes with pay. And most dissatisfaction in jobs comes from poor pay, job security, or the environment you work in. And I think if any of you have toured upstairs, you'll see that our conditions aren't perfect. So Lodgic, I think that the staff is interested in Lodgic because it's an improvement in space. And I think that'll affect our retention of people. There is potential lease income. I'm not going to go into the specifics there, though I have done some calculations. I think one of the real assets of Lodgic is the two real assets are the upstairs and the underground parking. By the way, when I talk about lease income here, in those numbers I showed you, there is nothing about income in that. That's only cost. So there is no embedded numbers that reflect some kind of lease income from the property. There is possibly parking income as well. And the last thing I'd say, again, is if that this building does have a solar roof, so from an environmental standpoint, that is a good thing. It also has underneath the second level of parking, it's a huge water storage facility, and it takes all the water that falls on that property and is able to store it, and then slowly let it seep into the aquifer. And you know, I think if every property in the surrounding area had that capability, we wouldn't have near the flood threat that we do. And so I think that that's a positive thing. So with that, I'll stop, and that's my view of the Lodgic situation. And I want to thank you all for your attention. And I'll be here for the duration. I'm sure everybody else will answer any questions like that.
Thanks for that, Bob. I wanted to give a staff perspective, and then we're going to get into the Q&A pretty quickly. So Chief, can you share a couple comments from a staff perspective? Lieutenant? Yeah, awesome.
Could you get the microphone here?
Okay.
You guys can hear?
Yep.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, I'm Jamie Weitzel. I'm the chief with the police department. With me is Lieutenant Dodsworth. So any questions that you guys have afterwards, we'll be happy to answer anything. So first of all, I just want to thank you for all coming out today. It means a lot. And for those that toured the police department, thank you. Hopefully it was eye-opening to see what space limitations we are truly working with. So I wanted to share with you why a new police facility is becoming a necessity for our department. Right now, we just have 2 workstations for 4 full-time officers and a community service officer, as well as part-time staff. This creates crowding, slows down workflow, and sometimes forces officers to use administrative desks with sensitive information is handled. We also lack basic wellness and readiness spaces. Our kitchen is limited to a single microwave and a toaster oven. There's no fitness space, and the locker rooms are downstairs. These limitations impact wellness, stress management, and overall performance, things that directly affect our ability to serve residents. There's also compliance concerns. The court clerk office is located inside the police department, which does not meet best practices, requiring courts to be separate from police facilities. Addressing this is important for both transparency and the public trust. Operationally, we don't have proper interview and interrogation rooms, meaning our officers conduct sensitive interviews in hallways, shared spaces, or even on the roadside. Our evidence storage is also very limited, and a past flood showed just how vulnerable that can be. A lot of our evidence was destroyed. Finally, our security systems and infrastructures are outdated. Our cameras are extremely limited and outdated. Our HVAC system struggles to keep up. Some days it's 20 degrees in the department, some days it's 90, it depends on what day. These are daily issues that affect safety, efficiency, and accountability. A modern facility would allow us to meet professional and legal standards, protect evidence, improve staff wellness, and provide a safer, more welcoming environment for residents. And importantly, it can still be designed to keep police and administrative offices accessible together for community convenience. For these reasons, I am asking the board and the residents to prioritize and consider moving forward with the new police facility. This is an investment in efficiency, compliance, and public trust, and it will ensure our department is prepared to serve the community well into the future. So, any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Lieutenant, do you have anything else to add or? We're good. All right.
John,
Yes,
could I add something from the court perspective?
sure. Real quick, that'd be great. Yeah.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Felice Borsi-Rudin. I'm the judge for the village of Sherwood Hills. This room is what I use for a courtroom. And it is nice in terms of being a large space, but it is inadequate in terms of safety. The only way to exit is to go up, and we don't have other safety features that are highly recommended. These days, safety is becoming more and more of an issue, both for courts and for village boards. So that's something to take into consideration. I don't currently have any chambers. I use a closet, literally the map closet for my chambers. And that is another space issue. But one thing that has to be taken into consideration in looking at Lodgic, because I've been hearing about the restaurant, is the statute, Wisconsin statute 755.09, which defines where the office can be kept for a municipal court and specifies specifically that no judge may keep his or her office or hold court in any tavern or in any room in which intoxicating liquors are sold, or in any room connecting with a tavern or room in which intoxicating liquors are sold. So any plans for the building would have to have no connection between the court and any offices associated with the court and any restaurant or tavern in the space. Thank you.
All right. So, thank you, Mark and Bob and Chief and Felice for laying out those perspectives. You know, at this point, we wanted to turn the evening over to you, the residents, because your input is essential to this process. I want to emphasize a couple things before we open the floor. First, again, no final decision has been made. We are still in a exploratory phase. It's been a couple, 3 weeks since we had an offer accepted. And this town hall is one of several opportunities for us to listen, answer questions, and consider alternatives. Secondly, the goal tonight isn't to sell you on one outcome, but to have an honest conversation about the trade-offs. Every option, whether it's new construction, renovation, or Lodgic, carries costs, benefits, and risks. We want to hear how you weigh those choices. So as you share your questions and comments, I encourage you not only to raise concerns, but also tell us what you see as the best alternative. If Lodgic isn't the right fit, what approach makes the most sense? What priorities matter most to you? Is it cost, timing, community benefits, or long-term sustainability? We'll keep this session open and respectful so everyone has the chance to be heard. And with that, let's begin the Q&A. And thank you for being part of shaping our community's future.
I'd like to, we have quite a few people on the chat.
Yep.
I'd like to ask that they don't just throw up things in the chat, that they raise their hand and wait to be called on by you so that
Okay,
it doesn't get too chaotic.
okay, all right.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for that opportunity. Mark, I see your hand up.
Get the microphone.
And Julie, we want folks to identify themselves.
Definitely, so the people who are listening know who you are, and if you want, if you're willing to come in front of the camera, that's awesome. If you're not.
Okay, I prefer to stay here. I'm Mark Sundquist. I appreciate all the work that's been done here because I was 26 years on the board and 10 years in the presidency. So I know all the things that go through and have to be considered. But I guess I would like to know, what is the assessed value of the Lodgic building? You have that number?
Yeah, so the village property tax and the assessed value on the Lodgic building is 5 million. The fair market value is 6.53 million. The Moose International paid $10 million last June to buy the building, to get out of the lease that they were in. And Ideal Builders estimated last year to build the building last year would be $14 million, but not including the FF&E that Bob spoke to.
Okay, so if we move to that building, then that goes off the tax rolls.
It does. And the village share, the village property tax that sticks to our fingers is $27,000 for that building.
Okay, so that's the first question. The second one if this building is sold, I would envision that apartments would go up. And because that's what's going up everywhere.
When you say this building, you mean the building we're in?
With the building we're in, yes. If this village hall is sold, then I would assume that eventually that someone would come along, maybe John Flad would come and say he could put a 5-story or at least a 4-story apartment, and this is closer than the ones we have to the village. The one we have, it's on University Avenue next to this building, is already sort of slightly overshadows the houses on Tally Ho and Sherwood. But have one on this side of the block would be worse. So I'd say that we have to consider what the ramifications of giving up this building are.
Mark, if I could just speak to that very quickly, because we have talked about this in board meeting. As you know, when we did the University Avenue corridor, we set a 3-story height limitation for development along Locust.
Okay, 3 stories.
3 stories, and we talked about owner occupied townhouses along this portion. If you look at the plan, you'll see that. And because we're anticipating that this went forward, we would actually do an RFP, a request for proposals that different developers would respond to. And then we'd review those and decide to accept them or not accept them. And the one model I've been using recently is Port Washington. So Port Washington got rid of one of their city buildings. They built a new building. And then they made their 1.5 acres available to condo villas. So that RFP process is ending right now. I was going to kind of check in and see what they're at. They think they can get 21 condo villas on their 1.5 acres. I'm thinking on an acre, we could probably get 14 if that's the direction we went, but it would be an RFP process.
But the village has already approved the University Corridor Avenue plan.
Yeah.
And that has been appended and made part of the comprehensive plan. So you don't need to speculate as to what board of the community had in mind in terms of the development of the space. It's in the plan. And presumably that would be the starting point of any negotiation with any developer.
I just want to say that there's no comparison between Sherwood and Port Washington. They're totally different kind of communities. So there's no comparing that these two, because they're not in the same category at all.
Yeah, I didn't see where that was coming from, but it was. Oh, thank you, Sherry. It was just a, I'm not patterning after that. I just said that's how one community did it. Certainly not a parallel. Go ahead, right over here.
My name is Samantha James. I was just wondering about the potential, the lease potential, the $300,000. That just sounds kind of vague to me. Can you go more into detail about that?
Yeah, I mean, we figured it would be around, the market values were about $25 per square foot for that lower part. So it's about 12,500. You do the math, it comes out to about $314,000. I recently saw what Moose was paying in rent over 12 months. They paid $857,000 for those 12 months. They paid $35 a square foot. We just got some information on the market analysis. We think the location is because it's high profile, because it has outdoor dining, because it's totally furnished, finished equipment. Same thing with the daycare. If you had a chance to go through the daycare, I mean, it looks like a tornado went through and took the kids away and left the bags and left the books and the toys and the doll dresses and everything. It's just amazing. It's ready to go. It's totally turnkey. So that was the basis for that. I can share, I mean, it hasn't been a top priority for us to go out and find someone to lease the building. We've heard some folks on the daycare. We've heard from folks at UW that could be interested in the daycare. We heard from a daycare that would prefer to have the first floor, the full first floor, for a 10-year deal. We heard there's a restaurant that's interested. But it's very, very early in the process. And really, that's not the focal point of our due diligence right now. It's really some of the things that Mark and Bob have talked to, and they can speak to this better than I can. The leasing deal does not relate to carrying our debt. In other words, if that space is vacant, that's not going to impact our ability to pay off the debt. We're not going to have to count on that money. I look at it as also, Blackhawk, we have a lease with Blackhawk, and we're getting, $134,000 a year. We have nothing to do with operating a Blackhawk. So I think we do a good job finding property managers and finding professional operators operate that space in a way that would spin off some revenue, which would keep us out of referendum in the next few years and create a fiscal bridge to 2031 when the TIF on the TIF 3 matures and all that money, all that property tax value comes on. And Mark, you probably know the number. It's like $600,000
For all the TIFs, I think for just TIF 3, it's about 400,000.
Yeah, and it's
Still, it's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, so that just boom, that goes right into our operating budget.
5 years off.
By the way, for folks here that want to be on the board, that's going to be a very good time to be on the board. So I point that out. So I hope that answers your question.
I need to point out when there's a hand raised.
Just let me know and then let's call it. All right.
Get someone here.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Ariel.
Ariel, nice to see you.
And my family has resided in the village of Sherwood Hills for over 55 years. We live at 3814 University. So we've seen the transition from over at the firehouse to this building when this building was a bank. What I'm wanting to say, first of all, is thank the village president and the village board for your service. It's a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. And also to thank the staff because you have to deal with us, the residents. With that said, I'm glad that we had this session today because I've just been getting information that says, oh, we're going to move to the Lodgic. We're going to move to the Lodgic. Well, I wondered what the options were. Tonight, I've heard the options and I'm glad some of the options. And I'm glad to know that it'll be out on the website so I can look at it at a later date. I've heard people say, oh, we don't want a daycare. We don't want a daycare. Well, the daycare brings in money. For example, at the First Congregational Church, which I'm a member of, we have a daycare that's been there over 50 years. That has nothing to do with the congregation and our beliefs. Having been a daycare director in Atlanta, I know that most of the daycares are on lease space. And when you run a daycare, it's an expensive business for both the babies and for the owners. So I don't see where this would be a minus. It's not the Sherwood Hills Daycare Center, it's the John Blow Daycare Center. With the restaurant, I'm kind of up and down on that. I think of City Hall downtown that used to have a restaurant in the bottom of that. I think of the Dane County Courthouse that has a restaurant there. So, you know, there are places that are doing these things. And I think that we as a village need to look at what our options really are. Maybe it's not the Lodgic, maybe it's not redoing this building, but let's be open-minded and see what options are out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. All right, we're gonna go online. Julie, does that work for you?
Yes, I'm not sure who it is.
It's an iPhone, so we'll have to, or actually, yeah.
Hey, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Andy Muller.
Oh, hey,
Perfect.
Andy.
Hello.
Yep.
So first of all, thank you guys so much for thinking creatively and opportunistically here. My question is, first off, is the board's intention, if we move forward with this, to sell the current site? And if so, and I realize this is a little bit of a loaded question, and so I'm not trying to change the topic, but is there a realistic path forward in terms of getting that developed, or is there a read through from the Garden Homes piece that might suggest, hey, there's not a willing developer here, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, we did have one developer reach out, not John Flatt, that had expressed interest in owner-occupied condos at this location. And he actually had some comments and a perspective about the Lodgic and the Lodgic's availability. So I think there would be interest. I think this, you know, this, as Mark said, we've got a University Avenue corridor plan that kind of lays out the long-term vision for this corridor. We're landlocked. We want to take advantage of every opportunities. This is a prime location. Developers over the years have paid $30 to $100 per square foot for land along the Shorewood side of the corridor. We've had developers pay $60 a square foot. So at $60 a square foot, there's $2.5 million sitting at this location. And if that can generate a redevelopment of a $10 million valuation, that's going to benefit the tax base, and it's going to give us capital to apply to some of the other priorities in the village. Does that help you, Andy? Or he's off. Okay.
It does. But it is the board's intention to sell the location then?
If we move police and administration over to the Lodgic or anywhere else, this property would become available, and we'd probably dispense of it as part of our request for proposals, where we would have the opportunity to design and influence ultimately the development that we'd like to see at this location in the village.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to add, John, is that obviously timing is very uncertain here. We do have the example of Garden Homes that's laid fallow for many years, and it may take some time. And the negotiations, the selling the land may be the easy part, but I don't imagine anybody will buy this land unless they have a plan to develop it. And that would mean entering as the zoning authority on this piece of property and all of University Avenue on this side. That would all have to be negotiated. And that's why I think when we work with Bob and trying to work through the numbers, we didn't put a number on this. Didn't put a time on this because we realized the uncertainty of it. We tried to take a more conservative attitude, set aside lease income, sort of set aside additional property development, realize the potential is there, and to my mind is very likely, but timing is an issue. But we're not using that money. We're not spending it in advance to pay to service the debt or to run the village's operations. So we're taking a pretty conservative look at it.
Thanks, Mark. Michael, I saw your hand up.
Hi, can everybody hear me? I'm going to stay here, even though I'm sure people out there want to see what I look like. Michael Van Laningham, I live on Harvard Drive. I wanted to support, I think, the acquisition of Lodgic. And this is after considering some of the proposals that are put forward and doing the tours tonight. And I'll echo some of what Ms. Ariel said earlier. I think the village finds itself in what German chess players call Zugzwang, which is when you have only a choice of moving. It doesn't mean any of your choices are good. Bob presented some of the numbers tonight for renovating properties, which always involves some risk. asbestos abatement and all of those things, moving staff around. Or we could buy this property. I see a higher positive or a higher upside to buying this property at Lodgic than I do a downside. And I'll talk about that pretty quickly. I see a space for a new community center. I have a daughter that has a genetic disability that causes mobility issues. When she goes to Four Corners at the community center, it's really difficult for her to get up the stairs. I worry about her slipping on the steep concrete steps, trying to get up there. At Lodgic, there's an elevator. There's a place for children to watch movies, for children of all abilities. Putting the community center at Lodgic in the space that I saw tonight means that we wouldn't have to rebuild the community center at the pool, the building of which is in kind of a dreadful state. I love the pool, but the building needs to be redone. Without a second story, without the compliance required under ADA, you have a significant cost savings that I believe the pool committee has discussed along with some of the recent documents that are available on the village website for different meetings, including the last trustee meeting. With a modern space, you could also generate revenue, although I think that's more up in the air. And also there would be things like a daycare, which I think is a positive community good. It's very difficult to find daycare placement. The Moose Lodge International had to buy out the lease from the daycare. That is the nicest daycare I've been in. I've had my children at Meeting House. I've had my children at the Wiseman Center. I've had my children on the west side in different buildings. It's the nicest daycare I've been in. And even back at the East Coast where we moved from 7 or 8 years ago at this time. While I know that that's up in the air, I think that's a potential positive externality for the community. Developing this space, an acre, half of which is devoted to parking for 3 dozen cars, could be developed into a building that provides houses for housing, or for residents who want to downsize. More families in the village means more enrollment in our school, which has fallen since the pandemic by 100 students. The school is one of the reasons why the property values here are so high, because people want to send their children to this elementary school, but population numbers just don't work out. This village is 30% larger than it was in 2010 because we've created more housing. And more housing to live in this village, to send your children to Four Corners, to take part in the Shorewood experience that many of you had raising families is something that I would like to see for more people who have to fight tooth and nail to put down an offer on a house. It's like a street fight. So, with all that, I do think that taking this property off the rolls, it will require something, it will require this property to be developed. But just from a philosophical standpoint, I believe in more homes for more families and more space that is more accessible for people. And while this may seem like it's the center of the village hall has been here 30 years out of 100 in the village. The village has changed drastically in the last 100 years. And I would like there to be a plan to move forward the next 100 years without quick fixes and without deferring maintenance further on facilities that have gotten us into this place. And I know that $6 million sounds like a lot of money. Our lake homes are selling for $4 million right now in the village. And so I think that this is something that we can do. And it also protects us from the risk of climate change, which have increased catastrophic rainfalls, which, as everyone knows, 7 years ago, this meeting that was taking place here was adjourned because of water pouring into the basement. And as the chief mentioned, it ruined a bunch of evidence that could affect things in the future. So with that, thanks for your time.
Gary Johnson in the back.
Actually.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Hi, I'm Blanca James and I live on Marshall Court by the convenience next to the clinic and next to Ronald McDonald House, next to the restaurants and such. Right in front of Lodgic. And whereas everyone is thinking about everything and everyone else around the village, the actual street itself, it's not conducive to the kind of traffic and the kind of activity that is actually currently happening now. With the addition of seven buildings along the street, traffic has become really, really terrible. In addition, with the changes to the university, the entrance to the hospital and emergency, more cars come down our way. In addition to that, having the new restaurants and having La Brioche and more businesses on that little mall has added to parking. Come Saturday or Sunday, residents in that condominium have no parking. It's totally all day long. And it's impossible for us to find parking for our families or our guests. Fine, we can deal with that. The corner where Lodgic is, it's not right next to the pool. It's right next to the parking lot, to the mall there, to the little mall there. So it's not right next to it. Access from that street where the restaurants and such are is really very busy as it is now. The street is very narrow as you turn towards the University Station Clinic, whereas you can't even see who's coming. And so the parking, the driving and all that. And the last thing is what I call mass exodus. It's from 3:30 to about 6, where the veteran hospital, the clinics, on both sides, our side, Marshall Court, going towards University Avenue, and behind, towards Highland, are just rows and rows of cars. We have to wait to get into the street to park. So you have police cars coming out of the parking lot. That parking lot, I didn't even know it was there because it wasn't used very often. It was used by the hospital. They were given permission to use it by the owners. And ever since that, it hasn't been used. So I don't know what kind of additional traffic is going to take place there. So as a resident of Marshall Court, living right next to important other locations, buildings, I just don't see how police cars are going to come out, racing out from the parking lot to an emergency situation. And if that's going to also, one more thing. Also, I've been in the Lodgic building. It's a lot of wasted space right now. It's going to require a lot of remodeling because you lose almost half of the building with a beautiful fireplace. So the cost of less than $1 million to renovate, I don't think so.
Thank you for that, Flex. Chief, can I ask you to comment on emergency response and your point of view on that in terms of access and location and? Okay, that's fine.
Knew she was gonna do that. So this was brought up a few times when we were doing tours of the upstairs. So ideally, the officers are out on patrol. So they shouldn't be responding lights and sirens typically from the police department. They should be on patrol in the village, responding from where they're at. So they could already be on Marshall Court. They could be on Tally Ho. They could be on Lake Winnebago Drive. They could be responding from anywhere.
All right, thanks for that, Lieutenant. All right, I had Gary Johnson up next.
I am not Gary Johnson. This is David Vito. As much as I'd like to be here.
We're going to Gary after this. Go ahead.
University Bay Drive. I sat on the board, sat on multiple committees over the years. I will keep this quick. The Lodgic is what I describe as an opportunity cost to the village. So it seems like, to me, this is a middle ground that is a Band-Aid for DPW. It's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for the other uses. I'd rather see us either do a Band-Aid approach short term, until the debt falls off and and then we raise that to do something that actually satisfies all the needs of the village. One of the plans looked pretty good to me. It's more expensive, but the opportunity cost is spending the money now. There's a value to this, right? Like we have 3 kids, I have a beat up minivan. If someone offered me a Ferrari for half price, it's a great deal. Could be the deal of a generation, but it doesn't, I'd still have to buy another car. And that's what I view Lodgic as. Like it could be a great deal, but it doesn't fit our needs. And I have one question for the board, specific. I am not a commercial real estate person. I don't think, I'm sure some people on the board have experience at the margin, but did the village have representation as a buyer for Lodgic? Or are we relying on non-professional who have limited knowledge in commercial real estate going up not against, but coordinating with a seller who has vast experience in commercial real estate? So was the village represented on this offer?
Well, we work through Axley Law Firm. We work through our village attorney, and they certainly they're a sizable firm. They have considerable commercial real estate experience, and they were the folks that wrote the offer. Axley.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ann Duty and I live on Tally Ho for, 35 years. I basically don't like the idea of going to Lodgic. I don't think the meeting seems like you're really open to ideas. It seems like it's very Lodgic centric. And so I'm going to bravely throw this idea out like you really want ideas, which I don't think you do, actually.
Yeah.
So I think one thing we probably all agree on is where we're sitting is really valuable. This corner is really valuable. So can't we work with a developer who would develop some housing on top of what we need? Thank you.
Go to the other side, because this side's not preferential.
Tam, could you let John?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's go to Gary Johnson.
Go to Gary's side. No, Gary's.
The famous Gary Johnson. Have we found him?
Yeah, he's right there.
I'm concerned about the fact.
Phil, I'm sorry, can you identify yourself?
It's going, it's on. Just go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the fact that this village is not any more prepared for a flood than it was in 2018. And that was many houses over near the school.
Make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Okay, and the whole, this area that you're talking about developing should be in a floodplain. It is in a floodplain, and it should be a flood zone. And you shouldn't be building things there. And yet, you keep acting as if it'll solve itself, where the risk is so rare that what the hell? But I mean, that's not the way to do things. And on this question, are we talking about this building being, we're going to take it off the tax rolls? Is this building going to go off the tax rolls?
Yes.
It is off the tax rolls. They're going to stay off.
No, that's not up. Are you talking about this building, or are you talking about the building they're thinking of buying?
Well, they're obviously thinking about, I'm thinking about both of them. Now, we've already got this building off tax rolls, and we've got the golf course off the tax rolls, and we're using that fact to bring in all kinds of money that we do not share with the county, the schools, or MATC. Are we gonna do some more of that? Is that the plan here? I mean, I think that's, really not, I mean, that is really not good neighborliness as far as living. If the village is, taking, help us, putting this stuff, taking all this stuff off tax roll and screwing the schools and all these people out of it, and is that a way to develop and get solvent? I think that's a bad idea.
Now, Gary Johnson.
Thank you. I've got a couple. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to go over and look at the Lodgic building today. I think that was very helpful. I think probably most of the people here did that. If you didn't do that, you should have. It was very revealing to me to be able to see what that facility looked like. But having said that, I also appreciate that the board took the steps to lock in a price on that in the case that we do want to go that direction. We may not want to go that direction. But I think it made sense to say, okay, give us 90 days to look at this and see if we want to do it. So thank you for that. A couple things, concerns I have. I much prefer this location to that location. I said this the last meeting. I didn't change my views by going over to the Lodgic building. I think this is a better location in terms of being kind of central in the village. I also don't like at the Lodgic building, the village would occupy the second floor, the first floor not. I don't like that as much. I don't like having going to the building and go up an elevator to get to village office. So that's a concern for me. But having said that, the building is fantastic. It's a beautiful building. It has a lot. It would be the office space on the second floor would be much easier to adapt to our needs than anything we have currently. It would still take some work, but it's much easier to make that fit our needs. Parking, there's parking there, but I think that's kind of an iffy issue because I know there's some parking now that's rented by the month to the university. So if you continue to do that, which would provide revenue, it means there are less spaces than whatever it is, 68 or whatever the number is. Also, if there's a restaurant that's going to be operating there, they'd like to have parking because people come to the restaurant, so you want to be able to park someplace. And if you get in a situation where if you're going to have village meetings there that attract a crowd like this, and at the same time there's a business operating a business at dinner time, then there's really in Doctor's Park, and there's really no other place to park because everything is parked up. So that's a problem. I don't think it's necessarily insurmountable, but it's a problem. Restaurant, I'm worried about. The village doesn't want to be in the restaurant business, or you have to get somebody who wants to do that. I would, if you decide to go ahead with this, I would try in my mind to be pretty certain that I had somebody lined up who'd take that space and run it. And not say, well, we'll find somebody. Maybe, maybe not. So I work really hard at making sure that space is occupied. Daycare, same kind of thing. I think that's probably easier to find somebody to run a daycare there. But I'd like to have those things. You can't really solidify it, but I'd like to have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen. Barring that, I think it's a viable alternative. You know, it's not perfect, but I'm a big fan of Blue Bloods on the television, the top series, and their show last night. There was somebody who was investigating the police department because there were some problems, and the commissioner said, "We're not perfect, but perfect is the enemy of good." You know, if you keep waiting for something perfect, you're going to pass up something good. So I wish you luck.
Thanks, Gary. I'll just mention,
Over here?
I'll mention for the crowd, and actually, I'm gonna make a quick response to Gary, then we're gonna go to Shabnam, then we're gonna go to the online person, and then we're gonna go to Michael. But I was just gonna say, there is potentially a village access in that event room on the first floor. That could be a place, I don't know if people would vote there or if we would do certain things there, but that's a pretty sizable room. So there may be some village function for the first floor. So that was one. Two, Gary mentioned the parking. There's currently not a parking arrangement with UW. There was previously for 15 spots. Kind of put that in perspective, 15 parking spots at $150 per month would be like $27,000 a year, which is equal to what the village currently gets of its share of the property taxes is $27,000 a year. Shabnam, what did you want to add?
Well, first, I wanted to thank everybody for coming out. I love seeing your faces. I love hearing your voices and your opinions. I 100% am open-minded, am not decided one way or the other. I'm slightly leaning towards wanting Lodgic purely because being on the board for 7 years, I'm tired of no decisions, and that's bothering me. Like, any decision at this point is better than the continued no decision. So, but I did want to ask, because some people in this room, I might not hear you. Some people are going to be quiet. If there could be like a show of hands of who is 100% supportive and wants it, who 100% doesn't want it, and who is who also, like me, isn't certain. Like,
this is.
This is not the time for this job.
is that, no? I just wanted to know,
Listening to what people have to say. I don't think a vote is the right way.
just like a show of hands, if any,
Maybe, but not now.
people are gonna start walking out.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just gonna jump in, and if people do have to leave, I hope you don't. We're gonna get through this as quick as we can. Definitely share your remarks online as well. We've got a comment section, so definitely weigh in. We've got a lot of folks have weighed in so far. I'd like to go to Julie and Kevin Eichhorn if they're still on. Did you have a question or a comment?
Sure. Hi, this is Julie Eichhorn. I live on Columbia Road. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. So I hope that I come across as a sentient voice that impacts your decision making, but I have not been here for the whole meeting. I would just like to say that Lodgic feels like a high risk investment. And I feel like I may not be a high risk investor. The reason I chose Shorewood was not for the high risk value of my home, but for the value of my home. And so the longer we talk about the value in terms of qualitative, it makes me uncomfortable because I'm not seeing anything quantitative. And the idea that a restaurant and managing a restaurant would really provide us quantitative data or quantitative numbers or rewards still feels high risk to me. And I understand that change can be hard, and that we haven't made any decisions. But because we haven't made any decisions, it doesn't mean we should take the first one that comes our way. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for letting me speak. Take care.
Julie, thanks for sharing. I'm gonna go to Michael and then we'll go to you, John. Michael?
Michael Steenan, 2814 Marshall Court. I'm very concerned that you keep throwing around the numbers about the capital cost. I want to know what the cash flow is. That's a very large building, and it's, you can say it's energy efficient if you want to, but it's still going to cost 4 to 5 times as much as it costs to run this building. Say nothing of the fact that I would like the future board to be honest about maintenance and upkeep. You should be putting away at least 3% a year of the value of the building, and this building is, you know, you're buying for $6 million. It's a $14 million building, so your cost that you should be putting aside to keep it running so it doesn't get into disrepair is much higher than what you're spending here. Also, as a resident on Marshall Court, I share Blanca's concerns. we talked many, many years ago about what was gonna happen to Marshall Court when you built all these buildings on it, and sure enough, that's what happened to Marshall Court. We can talk about that later, though. I think we should eliminate the parking altogether on Marshall Court.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Go to John.
John Taylor, I live on Dartmouth Road. I'd like for you, I would like for the opportunity to talk to the people who had businesses in there. Why did the children's program shut down? Why did the restaurant shut down? That's gonna be the battle.
Yeah.
Bringing someone into those, sort of redesign, whatever, they're very specific design, spatial design. Not gonna be good for someone, I went there and ate twice, and we enjoyed it, but I just, I've been in the hotel business on the West Coast. We had 49 properties. We had, things that a lot of people have enjoyed, like 12, worked with them.
Yeah.
I've had my hat in that circle. And so, there was a plan, there was a design, it failed. Why?
Yeah.
So what's happening with the kids? We're gonna walk the kids there, we're gonna drive them in, drive them out, the time, whatever, just those two things. If you're trying to qualify the value of that building with those two identities, you better find out quick why it failed.
John, I appreciate that. I'll share a couple of comments just from my perspective. I mean, and I just got the revenue, their revenue stream, the revenue that they were doing pretty decent revenue.
John, you've got to tell them about the background on the contract and the fact that it was run by a nonprofit organization that was subsidizing the
Sam.
entire system.
Sam, I've got the mic right now. So.
But give us the right information.
Come on. Let me respond. So everyone knows this was Moose International's idea. Moose Lodge has been around forever. This was kind of like their 21st century idea of what a Moose Lodge would be. It'd be a co-working space, it'd be a restaurant space, it'd be a daycare space. And they did 3 of these in the country, one in Champaign, Illinois, one in Lexington, Kentucky, and one here in Sherwood Hills. The other 2 operations did terribly. This one did pretty well. And we're just getting into the cost structure and seeing what the revenues are. But they had revenues as high as $393,000 per month. The lowest month I saw was like February or January, it's like 234. They had really good cash flow, but they had, they opened in the teeth of Lodgic early in COVID. They opened with COVID, and then they really got going pretty good. Then we had University Avenue reconstruction. I mean, it kind of looked like Berlin after the war out there for a while. So that was definitely hurting their dinner. And then their organization decided we don't want to do this anymore. This is a very, very large charitable organization. They do $75 to $100 million in charitable contributions every year. These 3 properties were kind of like fun and games. So they dispensed with the properties. Now the one in Champaign and the one in Kentucky, they owned. They could sell those. The one here was leased for a 10, 15-year process. They paid over a 12-month period $857,000 in rent. They paid $35 a square foot. We're just getting the details in terms of the restaurant and with the daycare, but they had no interest. They had a lot of interest in the daycare. They had a lot of interest in the restaurant. They had no interest in leasing. In fact, they spent $10 million to get out of that lease so they could dispense with the property. They paid $10 million last June. So that's my understanding of it. From my kind of initial look at things, it was pretty successful. But as an organization, they just said, we're moving on. And so when we became aware of it and became aware of potential price point, we thought it was worth having the staff go through, talk about it as a board, and just see. We've been talking about facility stuff for 12, 18 months.
It's a reasonable thing to do,
Yeah.
just to be curious.
Yeah.
Good for you for doing that. However,
Give him the mic. Okay,
Yeah.
well, no, I think we need to move on to another question.
Okay.
Well, other people, right?
Well, Marilyn, we'll go to you and then we're gonna go to Ron.
Yeah.
I know. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ron.
I'm on Tampa, I live on Edge Hill Drive, and my leg's all cramped up, so I can't stand. So, bear with me. I went into this, investigating this opportunity with an open mind. I was not informed of any of this until mid-August. So I didn't really have a point of view. Read all the materials, attended the August 19th meeting. Talked to a lot of neighbors, went to the tour. I'm here tonight. My preference would be for a referendum. I understand that's not possible, complicated. We don't have time for a referendum, but I believe in democracy. So if the village residents and stakeholders feel we should go one way, and I don't feel that way, I'm good. This is democratic. I do think we may have time for a survey, an online survey, online, or a written survey sent to homes for people that are going to miss it online. That could be a proxy for a referendum. And then we'll know transparently where the village is. And if that survey comes back that it's to do this transition, even though I may or may not want to do it, I'm good with that personally. I think we should do what the village residents and the stakeholders is an important issue. That survey could be very simple. Hey, it's starting off on a communications committee. I'm on, and we're going to do a survey. That's more complicated. We have two questions on the survey. Do you favor this move or not? And why? And it doesn't have to be an overly complicated survey. I think a lot of the criteria that folks have said is more singularly financial. I think there are more, and some people have spoken to other issues, but this is just, in my opinion, not just a financial issue. The financial issue is very complex. And I had a scripted thing here until the presentations, and I was not aware of Tom's 3 scenarios. But some of those scenarios are pretty interesting. I tried to assimilate them in 20 seconds and I couldn't. But, 11 million to 12 million with a $2 million offset, that's $9 million. I know that could be more with escalating prices. The Lodgic option looks like 7.5 million with renovations, $2 million offset on the sale of Village Hall, $7 million. We keep talking about the cost of purchasing Lodgic versus a new building. Well, what about a renovated Village Hall? Okay, so if we purchase Lodgic renovated for 7.5 and put 2.5 to 4 million in this building, we're ahead of the game. We have some $1 million left over. But, so that may be an option, but I don't know what it would cost to renovate this building. So to me, there's no incremental space in the new building for administration. So what we're doing is swapping even space, better space for a poor location, from my perspective. We're not buying additional space. We're buying better space. I went there. It's a beautiful building. It's better space. But it's a poor location. So that delves into and I don't want to dominate the meeting, but location, I think, is an issue. Okay. I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't like that location. And people spoke to that today. It's very congested. It's only going to get worse. It's not within the village. It is on village property, but it's not part of the village proper. And if we buy that space and put a 5-story apartment complex, then that's going to change, in my opinion, the character of the village to some degree. And that segues into the issue of character of the village. How important is the character of the village? And I think our character is changing a little. And I don't want to get into a lot, but my wife and I lived in suburban Chicago many, many decades ago. And there was a nice community named Hinsdale there. That was just a perfect little nice community. I drove by it with my brother last year, and all that beautiful village are all $30 million homes right now. The character of that village has changed. And that could creep with us. When we do incremental things year in, year out, it changed the character of the village. And a good example of enhancing the character of the village is what we did with the Haydn House. Perfect example of restoring a building, beautifying it, and making it better. That enhances the character of the village. One of the board members put out a note of risk assessment. This is a lower risk. I don't necessarily agree with that. If the majority of the village doesn't approve of this move and we buy this property downstream, that's a risk in terms of loss of potential trust or not, listening to the stakeholders. So I think risk assessment has to be considered. And so I am proactive. I think Bob put up 3 options. I think proactivity is what we need. I don't favor the other 2 options. I strongly recommend a survey. And the last thing I'll say is I'm aligned to Dietmar and Kate's viewpoint at our last meeting. 5 of the 7 board members were leaning toward doing this, and Dietmar and Kate said they were opposed to the option of buy. I don't want to mistake. Okay. I heard all those folks. I walked out of the meeting leaning that way, coming into the meeting open-minded, and I now feel very strongly that we should pass on this opportunity and look at some of these other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Just 30 seconds.
Yes.
My only 30-second comment is if we were to not go forward with this building, can't have a room full of people here saying we're not redoing the DPW building, it's $10 million, I don't want it. So if by saying I oppose this, then you have to be supportive of a $10+ million renovation elsewhere. Or somebody give me the numbers that say that all the facts given to us is incorrect.
It's 2 or 3 stories too.
So
It changes.
just wanted, that's all I wanted to put out there.
I don't agree. I think there are other options. So I do feel strongly that I think at our next board meeting or another special meeting, if we need to have it, I think we should do our due diligence and explore a couple other options that are presented and actually give them some airtime. I think tonight we saw a lot of pros for the Lodgic, but I do think there are other options. And so to your point earlier, this is one option, but there are many. And so we should not feel pigeonholed as a village into this one particular path forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, my
Sure.
name is Susan Porter, and I've been a long time resident of Village of Shorewood Hills. I have no experience in real estate or commercial real estate or law or finances. A lot of things I am not, but I am an 80-year-old mother of 5, grandmother of 11, and retired public school teacher in both the states of Michigan and Wisconsin. I've been listening to these comments, and first of all, I really appreciate the facts and the somewhat limited data you've been able to share with us tonight. But I think, as a lot of other people have mentioned, there's a lot more data and a lot more fact finding that needs to be done. There are pluses in all of these different situations, but a more equitable way of measuring things really needs to be designed. Right now, it just seems very kind of almost haphazard with little data thrown here, a price here. And I think it needs to be done in a much more systematic way. I agree that with the whole more of a survey type of process being done because I really think we all need to, we need a majority of the residents of Shorewood Hills to be in agreement with this. I agree with John, I think John, is that your name? That was the thing that occurred to me, like, all right, this place that you're considering, this beautiful building, Lodgic, it's been empty for a long time, and yes, I agree. Thank you for the explanation of the previous owners, but regardless of that, it's been empty for a long time. The restaurant and the child care center, and I don't know if there were other businesses there or not, but they didn't make it. And who knows what those reasons were. I too was at Lodgic today, but not in the hour before this meeting started. I was there at 12:30 or 1 this afternoon, and I was in a line of 3 cars that were ahead of me waiting to find a parking spot. I had about an 8-minute project that I had to go into the UPS store for, and cars were lined up waiting for a space to open to be able to park. Given that, these were some comments that I made before I heard some of these comments tonight, but some of them still might be relevant. It still seems to me that we have a lot more options that really haven't been delved into in any kind of a systematic way, that are real options, not just thoughts. It seems like it's been a hasty and unsubstantiated plan. And well, I guess I talked about this, that we need more research data, and public sentiment needs to be taken into consideration. It almost seems like this is a pipe dream on behalf of folks that want the village to be something it isn't. The Village of Shorewood Hills isn't a large real estate corporation. It is not in the business of financial speculation, which it seems to me like financial speculation is a large part of this. There are some, I guess, I don't know, the speculation is about the only word that comes to mind. It doesn't seem like it's more serious than that. Just a little historical comment was, Village of Shorewood Hills was incorporated in 1927, and as of 2024, our population was just a little over 2,000, with 618 homes, 30 condos, and 366 apartments. I know it's grown since then, but we're not a large community. We're a tight-knit, small community defined by our geographic borders. We are landlocked. I don't think we're going to see a huge growth within the Village of Shorewood Hills. And right now, our administrative staff has their hands full taking care of all kinds of our current wonderful community organizational needs. And we're not large enough to take on such a huge commitment, financial or otherwise. This would require a lot more staff, I think more staff than you're even thinking about, because these other businesses will be owned or leased by somebody, but somebody needs to manage all those other businesses that are going in there. And I just think that the only thing that this project would provide might be just a giant helping of buyer's remorse.
How about Fred next? Or no, sorry, you have the mic. Go ahead, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, thanks to the board for the presentations tonight, as other people
And
have
I'm
said.
sorry, can you share your name?
Sorry, I'm Laura Schechter.
Hey, Laura. Yep.
Columbia Road.
Yep.
The presentation tonight was helpful. I feel like there has been a lot of trust lost with the board. I mean, originally the idea of moving to the pool area, and now this being discussed for months without telling anybody in the village, keeping it very secretive. I understand that it's possible to go into closed meetings to discuss the details of an offer. My reading of the law is that that doesn't mean you guys can go into closed meeting to discuss the whole entire thing and then spring this on us 3 months later. The financial numbers we've gotten tonight are more detailed than the ones that came out originally, but it feels like you guys made the offer without doing much financial research. I mean, and now you're catching up maybe slowly. But it does feel like a lot of trust is lost. So I just have trouble. Some of the things you say sound great, but I have trouble trusting them given the process and how it went. I mean, renting out childcare and restaurant space does not seem like a great business for the village to be in. That there's a lot, it is going to involve managers. What if a kid fall? I mean, there's just so many things that could happen. If this was such a great building and they're selling it for $6 million, wouldn't some professional investor be interested in buying it? Isn't it a little suspicious that they're offering it us to this price and we're the only ones interested in buying it? That seems very suspicious to me. I do appreciate some of the things that were mentioned, some of the parts of the police document, like that there's no space to interview people. Many of the shared workstations, pieces like that felt very reasonable. Some of them, like there's no gym for the police, or there's no kitchen for them. They only have a microwave. I mean, I don't know how many people have more than a microwave at their place of work as well. So some of that, it felt like mixing in things that were important and not important. And my understanding with the police is that they are so underpaid here compared to other districts that, put a gym, fine, but like we're paying them so much less than other places are that it's hard to keep police because of that. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, so overall, I'm against it. I feel like some of the information you presented today was a little more convincing, but given how late it came and the lack of trust and the mix of things, and just if this were great, why isn't somebody else buying it?
Yes.
Most stores.
But Fred Wade, 1121 Wellesley Road. I was on the village board for 4 years. At the time, we had just finished borrowing $7 million to reconstruct the roads on the east side of the village. And there was a consensus on the board at that time, and I think it's substantially been the consensus that's followed ever since, that we didn't have the resources to do anything major until the debt service fell off. That's about to happen next year and the year after. So when I was on the board, we didn't consider the options and the alternatives. We did begin developing a capital improvement plan at that point in time. But the numbers on the capital improvement plans, even I would say the current one that wasn't adopted for last year, was mainly a question of things we knew we had to do sometime. But since it was something we couldn't do in the immediate term, we didn't get hard numbers. We didn't really assess the priorities. And so we don't really have a clear idea, I would submit, as to what the alternatives are and what they might cost. The numbers that I've heard tonight just came out is within the past month. I don't know how well founded they are, but I suspect that they are pretty much, they may be more educated guesses. But the alternative is not Lodgic or $12 million, because those prices go to things that could be spaced out over time as that service falls out. If you have a good plan, and we haven't got a plan, but I think strategically, both this building and the Lodgic building should stay on the tax rolls. For the financial reasons discussed by others earlier, that we are a small village and our revenues are not going to grow that much. So we need to have the development on the commercial corridor. And it's not in our long-term interest to take either of those buildings, this building or the others, keep this one off the tax rolls and to take that one off the tax rolls. we're not making any gain long-term. Now, I walked into the building and looked around, and I thought, yes, this is a very nice building. I asked John what the comparative square footage was. He told me, in Lodgic, we've got close to $50,000 square feet if we buy the property. We've got 13,000 square feet here.
Wait, did
If
you
I
say
understood
50 or 15? 15?
No, it's,
Five-
the
five.
building is 24,500, but the parking structure is 24,500, so that's close to 50,000. But the building itself is 24,500.
Okay.
Then I misunderstood, but it's still much more space than the village needs, and it was not designed for our needs. I'm very skeptical that we can get someone to come in and run a restaurant there. And I'm skeptical that we can have someone come in and run the daycare center there. It would be nice if we could. But I think that's a very big risk at this point in time. Upstairs, you've got 26 offices. Space is cut up into that. If we don't want 26 offices, we're gonna have to take out or rearrange some of that space. There are 3 conference rooms up there. They would be useful. But there are big questions as to whether or not we can actually use that space efficiently. I was talking to someone earlier in the village, earlier today, and they pointed out there are going to be huge insurance costs, additional costs, to insure that building as opposed to what we have here. It's going to have to be cleaned more regularly, and it's much larger floor plan. Those are probably minimal costs, but I think it's the kind of thing that ought to be considered in detail and systematically, to use the comment over here's point. And we haven't really done that. And on this timeline, I think it's impossible for the board to think that you can actually evaluate all of these questions and what the alternatives are and come up with a decision that will inspire confidence that it's in the best interest of the village. So those are the main points I think that are concerned. As I started out with, we were concerned that we couldn't do any major projects until the debt service fell off. And now we have an opportunity to start really thinking seriously about what our alternatives might be and what they might cost. And maybe spacing them out over time as the TIF districts free up some more revenue. And, but we haven't engaged in that analysis yet, so we can't really compare Lodgic with what the alternatives are. Or maybe, there may be other ideas. So I don't want to prolong this, but, and there's a lot of more detail. For example, I was shocked to learn earlier today, I talked to one of the trustees. We do not have now, as I understand, an independent appraisal of what the Lodgic building is worth. I'm shocked by that. Or that we are starting our due diligence basically with this meeting. Or I know you're gathering some information now, but it's too quick a timeline to inspire confidence wherever you come out. And that's why I think it's a bad idea to go ahead and approve it.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, Brian, you're online. We're gonna go to you next.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian Lodgic, I'm 3414 Lake Minota Drive. I guess I would like to start by a positive comment, which is I think that all of you deserve some credit for creative thinking and trying to find a way to find long-term solutions. And that is not always easy to do. So credit there is definitely warranted. The previous speaker, whose name I'm sorry I did not catch, I think really hit on a point that is worthy of all of your consideration, which is regardless of which way you ultimately go on this, there isn't enough time to be able to have a referendum for the village, which means that you all are going to wind up deciding to go for or against doing this. The deciding to go for it in your cases is going to be seen, I think, by the majority of the residents over time as a pretty significant risk. While deciding not to would be caution and be considering the amount of debt involved, the unfamiliarity with the businesses or running those businesses that are in place, and the timeline that you need to be able to make a good decision. I submit to you that you don't have the time to make a good decision. I feel like as a resident, I don't have enough information to make a good decision. And I'll give you an example. So as a resident, just if there's a referendum, we started out with the three costs that were displayed. And I'm sorry I don't remember those figures off the top of my head because I didn't realize I was going to be referencing them right now, but it's roughly $12 million and that $2 million deduction for the sale of the building. And in those, the costs were really substantial costs to renovate those two buildings, significantly more ultimately than buying Lodgic, right? Which is a much larger building, fantastic materials. I like they just most spent $10 million, as you said, for it, and it's valued at 14. Looking at those numbers, they don't make sense to me. I look at those and I think to myself, where did those come from? As a resident, if I'm going to trust those numbers, and that's the alternative to paying 6.5. I want to see how you came to those numbers. I want to see who the bidders were. That I want to see the design that was put forth. As far as I know, and maybe this all exists, right? But none of us know this. Was there a design? Where is the design? What were the bids? Where were the bids? I know none of that data, and none of us do to be able to trust it, right? Then, in the subsequent third slide, all of a sudden there's a $2 million figure that we can throw at the firehouse that somehow makes it okay. We're going to keep the firehouse, but we're going to chuck $2 million at it. It was 4.5 in the slide before, and now it's down to 2, and somehow that's good enough. Why is that good enough? And it wasn't there in the previous one, and it was $2.5 million extra just added on. It doesn't make sense to me looking at the way those numbers were presented, and I find it very difficult to trust that they actually have the due diligence behind them to make it to justify a financial decision like this. And anybody listening to all of this and paying attention, I think would have to agree that it doesn't appear that we really know what the costs of option A, B, or C are. If they are, I'm really sorry, but they haven't been very clearly communicated. And they need to be to us. And I think then for you guys, if you did decide to make this decision and go for it, and it doesn't pan out, as a lot of voices here seem skeptical about it to you, and I would act with caution on your parts. It's going to be very difficult to justify why you decided to risk the excellent credit rating in the village and restructure everything for that. So it's possible that all those things exist, and I would love to see them and see them shared. And then, but I don't see how you build consensus, even if it turns out to be the best of decisions. So I think it's the right thinking. I think it's the right direction. I think perhaps so. The idea before about there might be a third option that comes out yet that would involve some mixed use construction that would actually fit where it was residences above the village hall, right? Or something along those lines inside of that corridor. But I really don't think that it's not clear to me that we really know any of these costs. And that means that we're just guessing, and that's a scary position. That's all.
Thank you, Brian. I'm gonna go in the back with Nick for starters.
He's had his hand up for a long time.
Oh, Craig, go ahead, and then we'll go to Nick, and then we'll go.
Okay. Gloria. Yeah, this is Craig Whitehold on Dartmouth Road. Try to make sure I got my thoughts straight. First of all, everybody in the room should go back to the Facebook Live and watch last board meeting.
after the Lodgic discussion to watch Tom Deegan's presentation about his options. Tell your friends to do it. Everyone should go back and watch that. He is passionate. He is articulate. He is spot on. He's dealing with estimates, but what he was able to pull together in a short amount of time is nothing short of extraordinary. The Deegan proposal does not have a champion right now, but I think it's something to consider. The option 3 is, very competitive to Lodgic. With Lodgic, location is obviously, I think, the biggest drawback. It is not a community center that we could send our kids to. The worst pedestrian injury in the village in the last 5 years was on Marshall Court, about a half block from there. A lady was run down. There's no sidewalk on that side that connects. You have to kind of walk through the mall and the parking lot to get to the pool. It's not the best location. I can't imagine voting there with that traffic. I mean, I bike or walk, but if people have to drive, it's got some issues. The flooding, I'm very worried about. That building wasn't there in 2018, but with a 2-story basement garage, I'm sure that whole thing was a big swimming pool. I mean, it has a reservoir and so forth. It's a little bit up from the pool, but we saw the devastation. Maybe, I don't know, flood insurance figures into this. There's some cost issues there. There was a very interesting idea earlier, and it was from over here about rebuilding this with a private-public partnership. Madison did this with the State Street Garage. Madison said, hey, you build us a new structure and you get the upstairs and to do whatever you want with. And RFPs out the door, figure out who's going to have the best deal, who's going to give us the best deal for this high price land, and rebuild it exactly the way we want it. And then basically get it to us for the cost of them being able to build above it and get tax revenue. So that is, I think a very good idea. I think what the board probably needs as an action plan is to work with the realtors and put up some earnest money to extend the date. I think there's enough other things to really consider. And I think Lodgic has enough potential that it's worth, I don't know, 50,000 or whatever the earnest money would be. I don't even have a clue what that would be, but to get an extra 3 months to be able to flesh out Tom Deegan's plan a little bit in more detail, to flesh out this idea of a public-private partnership, get some thoughts on it and some models of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. We're gonna go to Nick. Nick in the back.
No, I'm not there. I'm over. No, I get on the list.
All right. I'll only be a couple hours, so. Hi, I'm Nick Kiernan, live on Talking Road. I appreciate all the comments for sure, but I also appreciate you guys on the board, which I think gets lost sometimes. I know there's been some questions and assertions made that, we just saw this, we just heard that you guys have been dealing in this world for, it sounds like years. And I think one of the challenges that we face as residents is that the Lodgic building has appeared as a potential solution. And I think you said one advantage is that we know exactly what that would cost, at least what that building is. And so it is kind of a shiny object that could solve some problems. And I think what we heard today gives some rationale to it, which is very important for us. I agree that, that last board meeting where everyone making in the comments section saying, we don't like the idea, where did this come from? We had all heard it for the first time. And all we're hearing is it's $6.5 million, we'll get rid of this and, let's all move on. And it almost seemed like it was a done deal. But when your board meeting happened, when we couldn't then ask you questions about what you were talking about, Tom's presentation, some of the alternatives, some of the space considerations, I think is all very valuable. So I think your challenge is, number one, how do you communicate all this complexity? I don't think that
you know, we have the right to sit here and say, you know, how do you know what this is? You've talked about it. You know, yeah, there's some risk on the restaurant, but it's risk. You know, how do you factor that in? It's not like nobody is ever gonna run. We're not running the restaurant. You're finding someone to manage a restaurant, the same with the daycare center. But I don't think we have heard enough is the kind of, you know, some detailed analysis like the guy on the call said earlier, so that we can share some of the pain you've been going through and going through some of these analyses. You know, we may not agree with your conclusions, but at least we want to understand how you've arrived at these considerations. I'm not particularly in favor of having a referendum on this because we don't know as much as what you're dealing with on a monthly or committee meeting basis, or, I mean, you're living this. We elected you to figure this stuff out. But we also want to have comfort that you're making the right decisions. And so I would invite you to really provide the communications that we can kind of join you in whatever, kind of where you're landing on these decisions. And maybe we should try to get another 3 months if it's too soon. But I really value your work. I know it takes a lot of time. How many evenings have you spent down here talking about this stuff? So, but we, you know, yes, we need more information. We need you to help us decide.
I just want to.
Thanks, Nick. Hold on one second. We'll go to Ulrich and then we'll go to Gloria and then go ahead, Shannon, quickly.
I just, before everybody leaves, is there a plan that we'll do this again a month from now with more information, or 2 months from now, where we could get the independent assessed value, like numbers for alternatives, more details for options? Are we going to have another one a month from now?
I think we should do it at the September board meeting. Thank you. Yeah.
So
I can't do that. That's 4 days away. The pack's 4 days away.
Well, the pack is on Monday, but.
I mean, there's going to be as many opportunities as we need to communicate where we're at. And so I would anticipate, I would love to do another town hall like this.
About a village listening session since we're not a town.
Thanks for that correction. Another village hall. All right, so I'm going to go to your question and then
Okay,
Ulrich and then Gloria.
I'll be really brief.
No, go ahead.
I'm Jenny Druitt. I live at 1230 University Bay Drive. I have been in the village since I was 4. So I remember, I mean, I haven't lived here the whole time, but I have been in the same house since then. I remember when the village hall moved here from the place that it used to be. I appreciate, so I'm sorry, I jumped into it. Thank you all so much for listening to us. Thank you all so much for having this. Thank you for all of this. But I would come down on the side of going back there because I was sad when it moved here and would like it back by the school.
Thanks, Jenny. Ulrich, and then we're going to go Gloria, and then we'll go to Kathy Brock.
So I may echo.
Could you just identify yourself?
Sorry, Ulrich Rosenhagen, 2905 Columbia Road.
Yeah.
I may echo what people said before me, but I want to, because I feel like I talk to a lot of people and there's a certain sentiment in the village. So I feel it's okay for me to restate this in my words. So I feel rushed into a decision. I don't think I have the information, enough information to make a well-founded decision here. I see more concerns. I still have more concerns about buying this building than anything else. I don't think that the costs are transparent at this point. There were remodeling costs of 300,000. Bob, thank you. Much appreciated your presentation today. You said as a civil engineer, $500,000 is what you would guess. I would like to see this spelled out. I see the need for the police to have better rooms. That means we need a safety room. That's probably a good chunk of money. Can we simply see how much is this when we talk about remodeling versus the option which is kind of a little bit under the table or has been pushed under the table is rebuilding the old firehouse when everything would be built from scratch. So cost transparency, safety. There are traffic patterns, I think, that need to be studied. I talked to Mark earlier, didn't like your response, I must say this. I felt it was a little condescending when you said I should read the police reports. Yeah, the monthly police reports. And you said to me, 90% of the police action is in the Marshall Court area. The police report I read from the chief is like, well, we are everywhere in the village, especially around the elementary school. So this is false information. And I didn't like the style. I must say this. Yeah, just want to use the opportunity here. It was false information. Yeah. So transparency also in terms of cost. What if we really get into this building? Do we need new staff? Because we have new workloads. We need to manage a restaurant. We need to manage. Oh well, we give it to someone, but then we are landlords. So it's also a principal question. Do we want, as a village, do we want to become landlords? Yeah. Is this something, can we spell this out in some thought process? And finally, I'd be very curious. I don't know where the cards fall right now with the board, but I know there are people on the board who have more reservations than others. I'd be curious to hear from them because I heard mainly those who are in favor or leaning towards purchasing the Lodgic building. I'd like to hear from those who have more reservations and concerns, if they could fill us in their thought process. And so that would help, I think, the residents a lot if they are trustees who are not on the same page, kind of share the differences and their arguments a little bit, or their reasoning a little bit.
That's a good point. We obviously, provide opportunity for all the trustees to share their concerns, their perspectives. I know they were shared definitely at the last board meeting. There's an opportunity here to share further if they'd like, but I'm going to move to Gloria and then to Kathy Brockman.
Hi, I'm Gloria Beach, and I have a couple things I haven't written down. I was on the website just now looking for Mark's PowerPoint and Bob Falk's PowerPoint, Mark Leggers and Bob Falk's PowerPoint. Thank you both for preparing those. I'd like to pick up on Bob Falk's PowerPoint and echo what the resident Brian on the Zoom call said. I was watching your presentation and it seemed like it was Tom Deegan's numbers that were put together, and thank you, Tom Deegan, for doing that. But it didn't seem that both the renovation of this current village hall and the renovation of the old firehouse both needed to happen when on, I think, the last page, if we were to buy the Lodgic building for $6.5 million, suddenly this current is sold for $2 million, and that $2 million would then be applied to the old firehouse. And I couldn't understand why, if we're moving over to Lodgic, why is there only $2 million necessary now over at the old firehouse? Because it seems as though if we could renovate this building, and the slides that you showed on the PowerPoint were informative, but they were fast. That was the first time I've seen it. And it seemed, my recollection is that scenario one to renovate this village hall was 4.1 or 4.3 or something like that. And then scenario two, with the police moving over to the firehouse. But if the police were to stay here, and I want to say that evidence room downstairs is not a good idea with the flooding. If you're losing evidence, that's not good. That does need to be addressed. But if we can renovate this building to keep the police and keep the administration here, why would we not be able to do the old fire hall for $2 million? It just doesn't make sense to me. Because Lodgic is only addressing admin and police. And so why is there this big price tag for the old village hall? I don't understand that. To the point that the gentleman who I think has left made about his little girl getting upstairs for the community center when she comes over from Four Corners. Yeah, that's a really big issue. That's important. I want to be the community that is inclusive and provides facilities that everyone can use. However, I do not at all envision Four Corners kiddos traipsing over to past La Brioche, past the parking nightmare, and going into that community center over there on a rainy day. I do not see Land Rec kids, even though they're bigger, going over and, you know, they get to go on their bike rides to the ice cream place, but that's a very well-organized thing in advance. I don't see Land Rec going over to the community center in any way, shape, or form. I just don't see it happening. It doesn't make any sense. To John Imes, when you are saying you're expressing concern that we need to buy that building because we're afraid that a nonprofit might buy that building. The risk of a nonprofit buying that building is that we lose tax revenue. That's what happened when the old UW Credit Union building was sold. Right, that was awful. I remember everyone, oh God, oh boy, 50,000, oh boy, that's bad. Because the state of Wisconsin bought that building, we lost that revenue. And your concern is valid. What happens if a nonprofit buys that building? But you've already told us what happens, John. What happens is we lose $27,000 of revenue, which is no big deal if we buy that building. And that doesn't make sense to me, why we're so worried about a nonprofit buying a building that we ourselves will then take off the tax revenues as not a big deal. If it's not a big deal for us to take $27,000 off the tax rolls, it's not a big deal for a nonprofit to take $27,000 off the tax rolls. So I see that as just not a wash. It's just a non-argument. I don't agree with that. Overall, to the community, what some folks have said is there is a vibe here. Oops. George Will said you're not supposed to say that. Well, George Will, there's an essence in this village. We have a community. We have, I don't know how to say it. We have a vibe. And when you come into this village, you see the village hall, the police station's right there. You pass that sentry guard on the way in. We're not a gated community. I don't want to be a gated community. But when we are doing that university corridor that I know I've seen it on LinkedIn, you put it out on LinkedIn because you really want that to go forward. And okay, there are people who really want that to go forward, but we are losing something with all of this development. And you see it in Madison, you go downtown, you know, that little bookstore, a room of its own, it's gone. I can't even remember what the building looked like. It's all built up. We're going to become that if we're not careful. What is so awful about taking this building? Take the money, the $6.5 million. If we can do 40 million, like you're saying, what is the problem with the roads? Fix the roads. If we can do all this borrowing, fix the roads. That's Gretchen Whitmer, not George Will. Fix the roads. Fix the roads. If we need better facilities for staff, fix this building. Put the money into this building. If the old village hall isn't working, put the money into it. But we don't need to go over to Lodgic and buy a building and then become landlords for a restaurant. No one on this board has any restaurant experience. Does anyone on this board have any daycare experience? Are you know, landlords? I mean, it just feels like we are a government. We're not a landlord. We're not a business owner. And to the point of the golf course, I remember a lot of people being really ticked off about the golf course. Yeah. So when you're saying that is super successful, some people think it is, some people think it's not. I remember people from Marshall Court saying, do not give a liquor license to the Lodgic building. We do not want, am I wrong? I'm not wrong. Do not give them a liquor license. I heard our municipal judge saying, you can't have a liquor license. But, you know, so that makes sense now, why I keep seeing this, why I saw in the email, it's gonna be a cafe. Well, we already all go over to Ancora. You know? We go to La Brioche, we go to Ancora. And so I don't think we really need a new cafe to get together to, you know, do whatever we're gonna do. It feels like we're trying to do something because we want to do something. And the common denominator that I see with Post Farm Park, with building up this 3-level old firehouse and selling this, do Post Farm Park, we sell this. We build up the old firehouse to become this what did Sharon call it? A multi-function municipal building was what it was first called. We sell this building. We go over to Lodgic, we sell this building. Why are we so hot to trot to sell this building? That's the common denominator. That's what I see, is for some reason, we are doing all of these arguments, and the common denominator is we sell this building. And I don't like the way those FOIAs weren't, those Freedom of Information Acts went. That's just not okay. That's not okay. I don't like that.
Yeah, go ahead. Lori, I'd like to address, something you said there. As far as Tom Deegan, what I put up for Tom Deegan's, information, I hope short of a clerical error that I was accurate and represented Tom's studies, correctly. But, and if I made a mistake, Tom, my apologies, but, I think I got it right. But, Tom's presented at the last board meeting, and if you look in the packet, his full presentation is there, and I think you'll see the numbers that I
Thank
present.
you.
And the other point about the $2 million at the firehouse, my presentation, maybe it didn't come along across strong enough, but I'm looking at this not just as Lodgic, but of facilities, addressing our facilities needs. And I think in addition to purchasing Lodgic, if we purchase it, that we also have to be mindful of the other facilities refurbishing that we need to do. That's why I put the $2 million in there. If we're going to buy Lodgic, we still have to address the corrections or the updates that need to be made at the firehouse. That's why I included it.
That, but what I didn't understand is why, if we renovate this building, why we have to do more than 2 million over there.
More than 2 million over.
So what the presentation that you saw, and Tom, I don't know if it was correct or not what you saw, but what I saw is that we had scenarios of fix this building.
Oh, that's separate. That was Tom's, what he put together. So the you may be looking at the 4.1 million. That was based on his design.
That sounds good to me. But what I'm saying is that if we could fix this building for just admin, or fix this building for police and admin.
Yep. We don't have that number.
But then we go over to Lodgic and we fix the police and admin problem by going over there. Why is 2 million suddenly sufficient for DPW?
Well, it's a number that we estimated. Deepmar did some estimations at cost per square foot. That it looked like 2 million was a reasonable number to address refurbishing at the firehouse.
So what I'm saying is, why do we have any number at all that's more than 2 million for that building?
If Tom Deegan says that the DPW building needs 4 million just to renovate and just to have it, then that number should be 4 million, not
Correct.
2. Go ahead.
I'm saying, why is it only 2 million?
Wait, get them on a microphone. Kathy,
let's hear it from the horse.
Kathy, we'll go to you after this. No, Tom, you need a mic.
For my first one, I'm no. So my name is Tom Deegan, 3518 Black Rock Drive.
And, first of all, I'd like to say that those numbers, here's how I arrived at my estimates. I don't know how the village board are arriving at their estimates. Here's how I did it. I brought, contractors through the buildings, through this building, through the fire station building. I brought a, HVAC contractor, brought a plumber, electrician, and a large general contractor. And we went through the buildings, with Terry. It was nice enough to take us through all the buildings, all the closets, all the mechanical rooms. And then, I provided, plans to all these contractors. And I asked them to please look at the plans, tell me what they saw, take notes, and come back with estimates to do, repairs and renovation. And I gave them a renovation plan that's included in my phase 2 report. That, plans of how the village hall could be renovated, how the fire station could be renovated as one of the scenarios with the police and, DPW space. I give them those plans, and then I got their preliminary estimates back. And I collected that information and summarized it in my phase 2 report. And that's how I came up with my numbers. And those are estimates. They do not include site work costs. They do not include, technology, costs. They don't include engineering and architectural fees. But all of the other estimates are consistent across. So I wanted to have a reasonable order of magnitude costs for the different scenarios. Now, I chose 3 scenarios, but there are many more scenarios. I have, talking with the other people, I have another scenario now where it puts a modest addition on this building to accommodate police that could be phased very nicely, and that's maybe $2 million. It's actually came out to $1.9 million. I got that price today from a contractor. So there are many options, but what I think, it seems to me that we may want to step back and think about, well, what do we really want to accomplish? What are we trying to accomplish here? I think somebody said that earlier too. I thought that we were trying to accomplish the needs of the police department initially when I started. I looked at the FGMA report, and it was so convoluted, a terrible report, and a $19.5 million solution. So that is why I volunteered to do a more methodical discussion with all the departments and do a space needs assessment. We had very reasonable discussions. I've done this many times with hospital and clinic clients. And I know when people are being unreasonable, but these were very reasonable requests. We went back and forth, several iterations, and finally everyone signed off. The department signed off and said, yes, this fits my space needs. That was summarized in my phase 1 report to the board. There really wasn't much discussion about it, but that was an important point, because if the board wanted to challenge those space needs from these departments, that would have been the time to do it. That's the first step. Then it went ahead and placed those space needs in the buildings, looking at this building, the former fire station, and the west storage building to accommodate all the space needs across the 3 departments. So a little bit of a long explanation, but that was the process I followed. That's how I arrived at my pricing. There are many more options that could be explored, but what I've been not able to really have is a good dialogue with the board on the options. So we can lay it out and look at them, advantages and disadvantages, and then engage the community. And maybe we get it down to 3 options that we can look at collectively.
So you just threw out another number for a new option, and I heard you right. I heard that right.
Yes, right.
2 million, if we accommodate the needs of the police department.
Right. And this is, I think, when I talk about stepping back, it's what is the focus that we're trying to solve? If we're trying to solve the needs of the police department, we could put an addition on this building and be new space for the police department, renovate, build that new space with the police department in it, and then backfill the space that they vacate in this building with other needs to satisfy the needs of the administration.
I feel like this is a conversation we should have.
Yes.
Instead of rushing into purchasing.
Right.
And I saw the numbers and there was something tempting And but before we rush into this major decision for us, I think we really need to discuss the options. All right, let's be a congratulations with everyone in the village.
Thanks, Ulrich. We're gonna go to Kathy Brox. She's waiting patiently. Then we're gonna go online for
Maryland.
Shayna. And then, and I see, then I heard Maryland's up, and then, okay, and then also Felice. All right, go ahead, Kathy.
Not all that patient, actually. Thank you for thanking me for being patient. Kathy Brock, I live on Dartmouth Road. I have the same comments that other people have had. I think Lodgic is located in a very poor place for our central Shorewood Hills Village Center buildings. Where the board meets, where the voting gets done, where the firehouse and the services building. I think that belongs where they are and where they used to be. And that's sort of central Shorewood Hills. That's one thing. I think we have no business getting into overseeing two businesses in a building that we would newly own if we were at Lodgic. And one of the guides today said, oh, well, we wouldn't do it ourselves. We would hire it done from another company that would oversee the overseeing and oversee the management. And I thought, oh yeah, well, I didn't think that sounded like a reasonable suggestion. And the third thing I'd like to say, I did do the tour extensively at Lodgic today, also here. I agree that the fire department certainly needs more, or the police department certainly needs more space. They're very crowded. And I don't have a solution, but my comment for Lodgic, my tour at Lodgic, is that it's very flashy, lots of new stuff. It's ugly as sin inside. The hallway of offices stretches down forever with those tiny little offices about the size of the table in the middle there. So we'd have to knock out a lot of walls to make those things, or somebody said, oh, no, those would all be storage. Okay, the offices on the outside have plate glass windows, full length, a lot of the area. Those windows when I was there, they were letting in full blast sun. And so you'd have to have the blinds down, which is okay, I'm sure. The upkeep for keeping those windows reasonably clean, inside and out, the whole place is glass, as you can see from outside also. And my take-home thought of how the building looked, I think it looks slick and flashy. And I can see that, yeah, boy, that's got good space. Look at that office, wow. I didn't realize that that's the image that we hold in our hearts for the center of Shorewood Hills. I think it's a really ugly building. Outside, ugly, inside, slick. And I didn't think that, I don't like that much. So
Thanks,
that's
Kathy.
three things that I know a little bit about and have opinions on. I didn't get into the finance because I have no business doing that.
Well, I'm sure you'll come back and tell us what you really think according to the viewership.
I can tell some of you.
So we're gonna go to Shayna online next. Shayna, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Okay. We can.
Okay, great. Thank you all for spending so much time and energy on this. It was super interesting to see both the Lodgic building and the current Village Hall today. I live on Crestwood Drive, and my parents live right next door on Sunset and Crestwood. And I have a lot of personal feelings about all of this that I feel like are pretty important to put aside for the good of the village, and to our community long term. I run two hospitality businesses and have three young kids, and I really do want to be involved in this process and be educated about the information here. I care very deeply about the village, but it feels really difficult to do that in this form, and it feels like information is not or clear or complete or concise. And my question truly is like, how do we get there? And what is the process to get there? And how can we help get it there? I mean, it seems pretty clear that something needs to change with our infrastructure in the village and our plan for the village. I'm super happy to help in any way that I personally can. But I am curious about like what truly is the plan next to get something that is centralized, clear, complete, and concise.
Thanks for that, Shayna.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to understand how to get there.
Shabnam, did you want to comment?
Yeah, well, let's have Marilyn go first.
Marilyn, go ahead.
Hi there, Marilyn Townsend, 1121 Wellesley Road. This has been fascinating. I'm sitting here listening to folks' thoughtful comments about should we invest in the Lodgic or should we invest in alternatives? And where am I on this? Well, let me tell you, as many of you know, I was really concerned and upset to have our village board focus on this issue June, July, and early August in a closed session. As I made clear, it's one thing to go into closed session to negotiate. Should we pay 8 million for Lodgic? Should we pay 2 million? Should we pay 4? Should we pay 100? But it's another thing to keep secret from the village that the building we were talking about was Lodgic. So when I learned that on August 11th, someone said to me, well, what's your input? I said, I have no idea. I had expected immediately there to be documents on the village website telling us some basic cost expense analysis. In fact, what was on the village website was a memo from our president that really looked like a press release from the seller's agent and the fancy brochure from Lodgic. And since that time, as we have tried to ask questions and provide input, I found myself using the open records law to try and get some information. And I was, frankly, it took me a while to catch on. There was no due diligence done until starting kind of now. But what I see is that those board members who were in favor of it in closed session are basically doing due diligence to support that position. And we as a community are not getting on the one hand, on the other hand. Although this meeting tonight has been great, the traffic study, as folks are talking about having a restaurant, daycare, village hall, village meetings, it's going to be chaos. As I was going around the village, I met one gentleman, only one, I must say, among so many folks who said, I know nothing about this, but this would be my questions. The person said to me, I really like the idea of us buying the Lodgic. I said, oh, well, tell me about it. He said, you know, I went into the restaurant when it was going and I liked that restaurant. I said, well, I went a couple times. It was hard to find parking on Marshall Court. And I don't generally like to go underneath. I find it spooky, frankly. And he said to me, oh, I had no problem. I went into the shopping center. I said, oh, well, that's interesting because the 6 years I spent as a municipal court judge, I would deal with people who were ticketed, who had no business at the shopping center, and they were ticketed for using that to go other places. So a traffic study is absolutely critical because as the owner of that shopping center found, his tenants were screaming at him because they had people parking there who weren't supposed to be parking there. So I think we need a traffic study. I ultimately don't know whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. I must say I'm leaning in the direction of I don't think it's a good idea, but what I do know for sure is this board created timeline has got to go. Right now, the board needs to act on whether to approve this purchase in the middle of October. I feel really uneasy that those 5 who in closed session voted to push it forward may just rubber stamp that original vote without getting all the information. Folks pointed out today, and I had an open records request asking for the documents which reflect the ongoing expenses that the village may incur were to purchase the Lodgic building, including payments for debt service. I did get a chart on debt service. I'm not sure I totally understand it, but there were no other documents on file, was the response. Nothing about ongoing insurance, nothing about hiring additional staff to manage the building, nothing about hiring staff for maintenance. I mean, I think it's an ongoing process, but there's no way you can get that information and that the board in good faith could vote to approve this in the middle of October with all these outstanding substantive questions from our community. Thank you.
It's too good to talk now.
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
I want to speak to a safety concern. I've been listening to everyone, and what I've been thinking as I've been hearing this is that we should not have a daycare in the same building that we have our police department and our municipal court. I'm very, very worried about the safety issues. People are getting more violent. There are more people who are carrying guns. There are more people who are disrespectful of the law. For example, sovereign citizens. We don't know what will happen in a police department, in a courtroom, even in the village hall. If someone is unhappy, we have a higher level of risk that someone's going to try and take things into their own hand to try and get justice as they think is fit, which could result in gunfire, and that does not belong anywhere near children.
Okay.
I am going to take the mic now.
Thanks for passing around. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
I'll pass out. It's just.
No, that was great.
Okay, couple of things. Well, I have pages of notes here that I prepared over the last couple of days, but I'm not going to give them all to you, just out of courtesy, mostly because you've heard it already. A couple of things I wanted to say was first and foremost, as I told you before, the first board meeting I attended 34 years ago, they were talking about how do we renovate the firehouse? So here we are to Shabnaz's point, which is we don't make a decision. We now, I think, have finally moved forward enough that we can actually make some decisions. But those decisions have been developed over the last year and a half without any idea that we were going to be putting out a bid for not a hotel. I don't think anybody sleeps there. For whatever it is, a restaurant and a childcare and an office space. The reality of it is we are lousy landlords. Every single building that we have in this village that we own is in terrible disrepair. So now let me ask you, you buy this building down here and something terrible happens, like the sewer line backs up because they didn't clean their grease traps in the restaurant. And we now have to get that repaired. Well, like someone said before, we have to have quite a bit of money available. And are we going to not then say to them, we're really sorry, we need to redo a street, so we can't do your maintenance? No, that building is going to become money pit. A money pit. Well, I think it's going to be a stone around our neck too. In any event, it is not guaranteed. It is an opportunity cost. And when you have an opportunity cost, you also have an opportunity benefit. But in this time, I'm more interested in the opportunity cost. If it does not fly, if we don't get a renter, or we get a renter, such as what just was in there with a 10-year lease, and then they decided, oh, well, what the heck, never mind. They go out. We now have to try and figure out how to take that stranded asset that's sitting out there, that's costing us money, that we're not getting any rent. Oh, wait, we're now having to hire a lawyer to sue them because they've left and broken their contract. This is not where we want to be. We are not suited to be landlords. And don't tell me about the golf course shows that we're a good landlord, because quite frankly, I've sat in these meetings where the DPW guys have said, well, we're looking at those traps and all that oil that's coming down, it's coming from the golf course. Golf course comes in, oh no, that's because your pipes aren't straight enough. And it's like, well, no, we're finding your napkins in that oil. And so it's just this, we don't belong as a landlord. We just don't have the expertise. We don't have the background. Finally, to me, this is the heart of the village. It is not over where you got it. And I want to congratulate you for thinking outside the box and thinking about, well, we need some revenue sources. Great idea. But don't throw it on us with 3 months to make a decision that we are now going into the landlord business. This is not something that we as a village can evaluate. We don't even know how other villages have structured things like this. We need to do that research so we understand, how did they structure their contracts? What do their rental agreements look like? There's a lot of things we just don't know. But what we do know is the police department needs better facilities. And on top of that, we also know, because I have been looking at Tom Deegan's all of his scenarios and looking at them very closely, there are some very low-cost scenarios that would actually take care of what started the whole thing a couple of years ago, which was the police need more space. And so he's got some that are very cost-effective that we could actually put into action within the next year. So it's something that really has to be looked at. There needs to be a champion for Deegan's maths. So far, you guys tried to put him deep into the agenda for this board meeting we had before. And he had to ask to get moved up so that he wasn't trying to make his presentation at 11:30 at night. So you guys are not being champions. You're not being honest. And the last thing I want to say is just simply that I had to ask myself, am I so against this because it's really coming from Dave Benverato and John Imes? Is that really why I'm against it? Or am I really against it because I really think it's a bad idea? And I said, why would I even be thinking that? I'm thinking that because this board, and John Imes in particular, has not given me any sense of trust in what you're doing. And like I said before, I really think you would do us a service and resign.
Thank you, Sam.
Anybody else? Here you go.
Johnny, you're up.
Johnny, 1004 Yale Road.
You know, I read John's notes on the internet. I heard the first comments here by the board. You know what? It's a sales job. It's a sales job, and I think everybody here knows that. I don't want a sales job. Anybody who's been around at all gets suspicious when somebody starts trying to sell them something. The numbers don't really add up. It's a quick move. It just isn't backed up by facts. Then a little bit later, we hear from Deegan. Deegan is flexible. He's like a set of Legos. He can move them around. He can add something, subtract something. That's flexibility. That's creativity. We don't have any of that with the other plan. But the real problem with the other plan is, and many people have talked about it tonight, but it's extremely risky. We're not in the restaurant business. I think Bob said, well, we don't even have to rent it. Well, if we don't rent it, we sure as hell aren't going to buy a building that sits empty on the bottom. I mean, the whole idea is that we're going to rent it. But if we don't rent it, you know, we could bankrupt the village, 6.5 million. I just don't think it's a good fit for the village because there's too much risk. You know, everybody always wants to sell you something, and it always looks pretty good. But then you're the one holding the bag in the end. And when I say holding the bag in the end, I mean all of us here, including the people on the board. I mean, if this goes south, we're already in kind of deep trouble. We're spending more money than we're taking in. And we've tried things. We've tried to build on extra lots and make money. We've tried all kinds of things. We haven't tried garden hose, but we've tried everything else. But what we need to do is not be reckless here. We're not rolling dice. We're not playing craps. We need to be careful with our money, and we really don't have the facts or anything with the Lodgic building. I mean, it was kind of a dog and pony show today because as someone said, it's a flashy, nice building. It's a nice building. But does it fit our needs? Does it fit our community? And I don't think it does. I think this is a great building. There's other options. Let's work with them. Let's be creative. Let's think about it. Let's not get us in a, you know what I used to tell my clients? I say, if you're in a hole, don't dig deeper. And basically, I'd say the same thing to the board. If you're in a hole, don't dig deeper. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Good night.
Thanks, Johnny. Go ahead, Shava, quickly, and then we'll.
And I'm like emotional all of a sudden, so I'm going to tear up a little bit. So I think you mentioned it. Like, where does the board stand? Why do you make the decisions? Be honest. Tell us your thoughts. So I would like to share my thoughts. I've been on this board 7 years. And in 2019, in the capital improvement plan, there was supposed to be $2 million allocated for money to fix these buildings. And I waited those years out. And I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, like begging for money to be for the community center and like advocating for it alone. So where is everybody when we do want to fix buildings? Those voices are not in this room. We had a governance workshop that we spent 6 months having to redo the committee assignments only to not do the committee assignments. There's been pool study after pool study. We didn't have to spend money on consultants for that pool. A 5-minute conversation with residents would have told you the asbestos is on the roof, the leaks, and everything else that's wrong with that building. I asked the board to change a word in an ordinance Monday to Tuesday because our ordinances say that our meetings are on Mondays. I asked to change it to Tuesday. It didn't work. This is a place where ideas go to die. This is a place that upholds the status quo. And what is crushing my heart is that the reason I supported the idea is I'll take anything over the status quo. I'm tired of residents looking at the DPW building and saying, why can't we have more than that? Why can't there be a place for kids to have a birthday party? So you guys have a month. I want to give it a month or 2 months to get the alternatives on the table. Come to the CPI October meeting or November and advocate for the money for a different building and not the status quo. Because 6 months from now, if this idea dies, there's nobody here asking for another idea. It's quiet.
We don't have a
You
month.
have to vote.
The reason is because we've got a budget and the CIP coming up that we have to approve. We're statutorily required to approve a budget. You are we have to figure this out before your November deadline.
Absolutely. We were told that.
And it's every year, it's true. So we don't have until November to figure this out. We gotta figure this out now. We really do. And I feel for you because I support the community center, which you've been talking about, and I have supported these things, but we are not.
And the other
looking
thing,
fully at
sure.
Tom Deegan's.
But here's the thing, and I want to add to what Gloria's saying. When you talk about the community center, we don't have money.
Right.
We don't have money.
never have money.
Whoa, that's not important. It's at the bottom of the list. And when another idea comes up, we have money. So why is that? Why is it we have $47 million?
Building, that's.
We have money for certain ideas. We don't have money for other ideas.
Yes. That's right.
So well, I mean, where do we go from here? If we want to have a different building, I agree that you're shoving a square peg into a round hole, that building is not designed for a police department. It's not designed for Village Hall. If there's support for it, it's because anything is better than where we're at. But if we're not going to do it, then we should have the alternatives, and they should be in the October CIP.
Why don't we have the
Yeah, Deacon.
suggestion Tom Deegan earlier made? Why isn't this on the table? I mean, the problem really is a communication problem that we as residents heard way too late about the purchase or the option to purchase this building. And then giving us only 3 months to make a decision.
We have less than 3 months. We have less than 3 months.
Less than 3 months.
Oh, I will say that as the municipal judge, I was working with and providing Tom Deegan my information about what the court needs, and I was never told that there was something else being considered. No one approached me and said that there was, everything I thought was about this building and the old DPW fire station building.
I am happy to not vote for this, not support the library. But there has to be movement. The status quo always wins, and that is crushing me. I don't want to be here just for every idea to die. You can't change a word in an ordinance. That's how bad it is to be on this board. You can't do anything.
Look, can I just,
Sure.
Can we get some civility in the conversation and just stay focused on really what's at hand, and let's discuss facilities a little bit? So I will share, Ulrich, your question, what I shared at the last board meeting, where my sentiment is. And I think it's important to understand that there are 7 members of this body who will take the majority to move into a direction, whatever this direction may be. I have my opinions of what I believe to be a move, maybe I'll call it my right move, or the way that I think it should proceed here. And it's rooted in many permutations of what we should do. But in terms of priorities, or in the way I see things, is I would like to hang on to Village Hall, this space, 810 Sherwood Boulevard, as it is. And I believe that monies need to be invested to give it a facelift, and to maybe have it be a heavier facelift. I'm only looking at you. I should be probably looking at the broader audience as well to explain my point. And
as long as we don't switch it to German.
there you go. That's right. And everybody wins. So in addition to that, and what has come up at the last meeting is a notion to pursue, if indeed additional space is needed and wanted and supported by the residents, as well as what's needed for staff to maintain operations, what would that look like? Now, Tom Deegan, who seems to be the favorite tonight, has contemplated that notion. Him and I may not have agreement on what that space need actually is, but again, those are all permutations that need to get worked. There are cost structures in my mind as to what I believe to be an option for a 2026 CIP. But again, it'll take the rest of the board and committees, such as the Finance Committee, and Brian Mooney as the administrator, to put this all together. So even though I believe I've got answers, I don't know that it will be the answer and what we will all arrive at with the way I would present it. But it takes the conversation to get there. As far as Shabnam's concerns or comments, concerns, I don't know that I've got anything to add. All I want to get back to is why we're here to meet, or why we're meeting here tonight, and that's to talk about the facilities component. Now, facilities has been on the agenda for a number of years. Is 3 the right number? No idea. Is it 6 years? Is it 20? It's always been in the conversation. I also believe that we have many more needs to invest money into capital improvements than what we have debt capacity for. Now, Mark explained that there is the statutory limitation of debt capacity and really what we want to afford, what we're going to spend our tax dollars on, and finding where that balance is. The CIP, which is currently the one from 2025 to 2029, contemplated prudent ways of looking at a financial model to continue to fall in line with borrowing needs that don't let us lean heavy one way into a year of not borrowing and then more into another, sort of evening things out. The other point that I want to make in my list of priorities is, I have thoughts of how much money should be spent on facilities, and that's not necessarily rooted in a complete design or in having everything figured out, but there's a number that I'm plugging in my head. But I also have a number in my head as to what I believe to be major capital improvement investments that go into roads and infrastructure. And again, this is for a conversation that needs to happen at the board level, and Brian is diligently working on 2 different CIP models here. But this all will play out in the next 6 weeks. This is all to say that I personally have not been in support or a fan of jumping into the Lodgic at all, and that'll be evident on the voting record in private sessions, and the closed session, sorry, and then also at the last board meeting. But I'm just one voice. There are 7 of us, and it takes the majority to set the direction of where the board wants to head. So I've talked enough.
Appreciate it. Yeah, Steve, thank you. So we're at 10:12 PM. Was there other comments people wanted to share?
I'm going to make one more comment, and that is that the CIP gets influence, and it matters where that influence comes from. The community center was in there and then it was taken off. And I was told, well, it's not there, it's your problem. Why doesn't the residents have an input on whether we do the pool building first, the community center, DPW, or another building first? Where does that come from? Mark, you seem to say that we decide. We don't decide when 3 or 4 people work with Brian Mooney or Sharon Evelyn to make the decision and have the rest of us rubber stamp that decision.
Okay, wait a second. If there are 3 members of the board meeting in private, you are violating the open meeting law.
You can one at a time. Somehow.
Okay.
I'm not one of them.
To do that.
You can't do that. It's a walking forum.
You cannot have more than 2 trustees discussing a subject together without having a board meeting.
And you can't go to this person and then to this person and then this person.
I'm gonna jump in here because it's getting late, but we've had a range of perspectives tonight. I think this has been healthy, believe it or not. And this is gonna shape where we go from here. So we have to do, I think, even a better job with communications. One thing that we didn't talk about tonight that I think is gonna be a driver for decision-making is the financial modeling. I thought Mark might speak to that a little bit. That's something new now where we can say, we can plug in Tom Deegan's stuff and see what it does to the financial model. We can plug in Lodgic and see what it does to the financial model. And so we have a tool now that we've never had in the past. There's going to be an opportunity to use that to communicate the choices so that we can make these decisions together. So I appreciate the time, perspective. You know, if you felt you needed to share something tonight, you weren't able to share, send an email to me, send an email to Brian, go on the facility site, put your comments in. I really like the idea of a survey. We're going to talk about that, how we can do that. I want to make sure that we fully communicate what folks are going to be responding to. But I thought this was good considering, you know, this has really only been an issue for about 3 weeks for the village. But nice to see everyone.
I've gone onto the website, have been accumulated, so the rest of us can read them.
We could, yeah.
I think there should be the board packet.
Okay. There, we could put it in the board packet for September. Oh, we need a motion? Sorry, Carol. Carol moved. Do we have a second? Thank you, Kate. All those in favor, gentlemen, please vote to adjourn.
Yeah.
All right. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Yeah, I just.